Hello, listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is the Awards Watch Podcast, episode 213. I'm your executive editor, Ryan McQuade, and I'm by myself right now. No one else is here. Eric's not here. Sophia's not here. Jay, Dan, Josh, Nicole, Kevin, Catherine, everybody that's usually here is not here right now. They're with their families and enjoying some much needed and deserved rest during the holiday season. And that's why for episode 213, it's just going to be me here today. No, I'm just kidding. We're not doing that. I wouldn't do that to you guys in the slightest. But what we are going to do is we are going to talk about our favorite films of the year. And so we're doing it a little bit differently than what we normally do, which would have everybody here. What we're doing is we have 4 different segments where a collection of our contributors, including Erik, Josh, Dan, Tyler, Sophia, our newest addition, Cody Dericks, Jay Ledbetter, and myself, we all are going to talk about our favorite films of the year. And we broke them up in sections because it so happens that people on the team had the same favorite films of the year. So in the first segment, you're going to hear a little bit from Erik and Josh about All of Us Strangers. Then you're going to hear from Dan and Tyler about Past Lives. Then you're going to hear from Sophia and Cody about May, December. And then Jay and myself will wrap it up, and we're going to talk about Oppenheimer. But in between there's a ton of honorable mentions that we totally mentioned as well and talk about, as 2023 was just a big, gigantic year of cinema. And we enjoyed talking about movies, and we're going to enjoy talking about them probably a little bit more as the award season goes on, and looking forward to talking with all of y'all in 2024. At this time, I just want to thank everyone for liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing the podcast, following with us, giving us great feedback, as well as reading all of our great interviews and reviews from everybody on the team up on the website. It's just been a great year of wonderful, wonderful content by the team, and I want to thank them and thank y'all for listening. We're going to transition right into things, but Happy New Year to everyone, and from myself and Erik and the Awards Watch team. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Feels like fire. I'm so in love with you. Dreams are like angels. They keep bad at bay, bad at bay. Love is the light, scaring darkness away. Yeah. I'm so in love with you. Purge the soul.
Joined by our first guests, Erik Anderson.
Hello.
And Josh Parham.
Hello, hello.
Very different boys way than we usually do it on the podcast, don't we? Talking about favorite films of the year, guys. You guys both selected the same one. Erik, Josh, All the Strangers.
Wait, I'm here for Napoleon. What did I get the wrong?
Worst movies is next week. Next week. I don't have really any questions for you guys other than, Erik, why is it your number one movie of the year?
God, we're jumping right into it.
Yeah.
Well, as a fan of Andrew Haigh already, and just his style and ability to excavate trauma so really beautifully and sometimes so acutely that you're really taken aback by it. I found what he did with All of Us Strangers to be the best that he's ever done, and one of those career culmination things where it only could have happened now for him at 50 to tell this story. And so I was happy as a 50 plus year old to feel like I was in a way participating in it. It was a very feeling seen story and movie, and I sort of go around this in my head all the time, where if I'm putting together, a list of my best of the year, or things that I do consider best or good or great, how much of my personal feeling should impact it or does impact it? Because maybe another movie is technically stronger, but is my emotional reaction to this movie, is that the thing that makes it better or best? I don't know. I'm kind of always not struggling or fighting with myself, but I'm contemplating that all the time, because this was a movie that hit me so deeply and so personally, in a way that I was not expecting, really, exactly. And because of that, it just tapped into something that transcended anything else for me. So I found this gay story to be so emotionally just beautiful. It's sad. It's perfectly acted. And all technical elements of this movie to me are pretty perfect. The score, the cinematography, the editing, the sound all come together in a way that also aren't really that traditional for a drama. It's not a straightforward drama, but it's still a drama. But Andrew Haigh gives all of those elements respect and attention, as much as the script and the actors. And I just that puts it in such a special place for me.
Plus, also, you cried your eyes out when I first saw it with you. You were a mess, and
All 4 times I've seen it in the theater, it's been I
need a minute.
those things where, like, okay, I know this was the part where I cried a whole lot, so I'm ready, I'm prepared for this. And it was like, oh wait, no, I'm actually pre-crying because I know what I'm going to be feeling in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's like it's sort of a now a new instant one where you're going to put it on and you're going to cry. And I know your favorite film last year was After Sun, so to kind of partner those together, and whatever Pom Mescal makes next year, I guess it's going to have waterworks from Erik.
Here comes Gladiator 2,
Yeah.
number
Just
one,
number one. Come on, Ridley, come through. Let's go. You're so excited for Napoleon now, Gladiator 2. Josh, I know you, though, were bouncing back and forth between a couple of films I know that were really high on your list, and we can talk about those a little bit later. But what ultimately was the decision? Was it sort of like Erik? Was it like emotional? Was it personal? Or was it just something else that really attached you to All of Us Strangers being your number one of the year?
Yeah, I really did struggle for a while, kind of figuring out what was going to be my number one of the year. And, you know, this was a movie that I knew I was going to probably have a very strong reaction to because I do love Andrew Haigh so much. Weekend is one of my all-time favorite movies. 45 Years is really good. I may be the only person who loves Lean on Pete, I feel like, but I still really enjoyed that film too.
I like it, Josh, up until a certain point, if you know what I mean.
I know that's why I think people kind of jump off it, but I still really like it. But
Yeah,
but it means that I'm a really, really big fan of Andrew Haigh. And so coming into this movie, I had a suspicion I probably was going to enjoy it, but I I still really found myself so moved by it. And what I really admire so much about him as a storyteller is that he just loves characters so much. There's this really great attention to the intimacy that characters exist in and how that very close quarters really impacts the entire like journey of their lives and what they're going through. And I just found it to be yet another great example here as well. And yeah, there's so many moments in here that are incredibly emotional and so impactful. And for me, I wouldn't even say that I am somebody who is necessarily connected to the story on that particular level. This is a perspective that, I see some similarities, obviously, but it isn't like a one-to-one for me in a lot of places. But I still feel connection to them because the characters in this story are so wonderfully crafted and so wonderfully performed too. I mean, I think most of my emotion from this film really comes from that great performance from Andrew Scott, who, like, the minute he just flashes a tiny bit of emotion in his eyes, I'm just devastated by what he's going through. It's just an amazing, amazing performance. And yeah, I think that kind of looking at all of what I've seen this year, that this movie is the one I keep coming back to as like the one that I think about moments from, the one I think about performances and pieces of writing and the craft as well. That just as a whole package, it just moves me so deeply to my core that even though I can name like one or two things about it that maybe not quite are as strong, I still kind of don't care because I'm just so invested in the overall story that it's telling and the emotions that are coming across that it just really, really impacts me very, very hard.
No, I remember seeing it with you, Erik, at Telluride, and it was, I think it was right after seeing Zone of Interest, I think. And I was already kind of like, I got bull rushed by that movie. And then the other side of me kind of got bull rushed by this because there's such different emotional journeys. And we didn't really know much going into it, which was kind of great about it. And I mean, we just had kind of like the photo of that I have as the background tonight of Paul hugging Andrew Scott, and I didn't know about the sort of sci-fi kind of element to it, or what Andrew and Paul's relationship would be like in the film, when it was set. And I think that was just kind of perfect. And the way Andrew Haigh sort of kind of came in and introduced it, he was very shy almost. And he was just like, yeah, this is my movie. Let's just watch it or whatever. And I was like, oh God, what are we getting ourselves into? And yeah, I think I had
world premiere.
It was,
nobody had seen it.
No one had seen it.
It was so fresh. And
yeah, I mean, like I had Lean On Pete taste in my mouth because that movie is, God, that's such a frustrating. But 45 Years is just incredible, and so is Weekend. Those two movies are phenomenal. And I agree with you, Erik. It felt like the right time and it felt very personal for him. And it's to take this novel and sort of loosely adapt it and throw himself into it. And he said it was his most personal film that he's ever made, and you could definitely feel that in almost, in talking. And then also reading Erik's interviews, all of our interviews, because we've all interviewed aspects of people for All of Us Strangers. Just talking about.
We really ran the gamut on this. All four actors with Haigh, with Jamie Ramsey, the cinematographer.
We're the one website wrecking crew and cheerleaders for this movie. But I agree. I mean, it's so beautiful. And I mean, obviously, like you said, Josh, it's not a one-to-one comparison for me either, but we're all members of the LGBTQ community. We all have our different stories to tell. We all have those moments where we have those conversations like he has in the film with his parents about being gay, or the regrets that he's had, or the conversations that he wish he had, the memories that are the familiarity, right? Like when she's made him the cookies, or the clothes are still in the right spot where the jacket was, and everything, like all the Christmas memories that you have. But then under those memories are all the pain and the unspoken truths that were there, and mixed in that is then vulnerability about opening yourself up to potentially new love and having this future connect with the past, and ultimately have someone be, I wouldn't know if it's reborn, but renewed in a way by the end. I think that the ending's really fascinating to talk about because it's just so beautiful, but then it's, what does it mean for Adam in this, by the end? And I've heard interpretations by the cast. I mean, I think we've all talked about it offline at this point, but yeah, it's a really beautiful, special film. It's not my favorite, we'll wait till the end of the episode to reveal that, obviously. But it's in my top 10. It's a movie I deeply, deeply love, and it's made me listen to a lot of 80s music. I think this year has made me listen to a lot of 80s music between this and like The Killer. We just like going back and forth on the 80s playlist in the car. But it just feels so vulnerable and tender at the same time. And that's kind of what's so special about it.
I'm also a really big fan of doing an adaptation like this because it's barely got the bones of the original book. The genders are changed, sexualities are changed, the ending insanely, ridiculously changed.
Yeah.
And even for Andrew Haigh, this is not a one-to-one of his personal life. There are lots of personal elements to it, like shooting in his childhood home. That's pretty intense. That's going
to bring up some memories.
But like his parents are alive, and so it wasn't like that. And that's kind of what I came out of this too. It's nowhere near a one-to-one for me either. Mm-hmm. I was sympathizing so much. I was empathizing so much. And then I did have some feelings. My father's dead, but what I was trying to kind of reconcile in my mind, and I have each time I've watched it, was, would I want to do this? What would it look like? Would it be a horrible experience? What would I get from it? And I think that's kind of what a story like this does. What a really good movie does is really kind of have you be a little bit reflective and what if a little bit. And that was the thing that did take me off guard, because I did know a little bit going into it what it was, but not clearly to the extent of the open heart surgery that it was going to do on me in just a really shocking way. Yeah. And I love stories that pervert your memory, because memory is not a real thing. Memory is not facts and data. It's perception and interpretation. And it's how it's imprinted when that memory happens, and how you feel about a situation 40 years later. If you are kind of reliving it, it's going to be completely different. And that, I mean, how do you not, as a human, how are you not able to connect in that way with that idea? Because I think we all do that. I think we all think about the things that have happened when we were younger or at any point in our life, whether it's a good or a bad thing. And you can even look at a picture of something. Look at a picture and go, "Oh yes, I remember that moment." Like, you do, but it's a snapshot, and it's a small piece of information that we're constantly kind of relitigating and reliving. And sometimes it's different. It's different 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, because you're a different person. So you can engage with yourself differently as an adult, and just how you manage emotions. And I don't know. Andrew Haigh is really good at doing that. This just went to such a stratospheric level.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's so good at creating moments that are both highly specific but also very universal at the same time. And I find that to be such a unique skill for him, that he's able to accomplish that. And yeah, with this story, yes, there is a very specific route that it's going in terms of the characters that it is exploring, but at the same time, it is also looking at that connection that we all have with our parents, and the things that we admired about them, and the things that we questioned about them, and what we have regrets and thinking about them in the past. Like, in a state that we either don't really remember or were robbed of, and those perspectives and what we would think about them at certain points in their lives. Like, if you, any connection you have to your parents, I think is explored in this material. And I think that's what's so effective about it. Like, yes, it's on the one hand, a gay story, but it also is more than that. And I would have said that also about like Weekend as well. Like, that's a movie where, yes, it's about a gay relationship, but it's also just about relationships in general, about how people interact with one another. And that's at the core of this movie too. It's about just people's connectivity with one another and how lonely life can be, but also how beautiful it can be if you reach out to others as well. And I think that is very central to the finale of this movie, is recognizing those connections that you need to make with other people and how valuable that is. And that's why it's so emotionally effective for me. And I would also say it's absolutely his, like, technically his best looking movie for sure. I mean, the imagery in this film is just so unbelievable. It just, the color scheme in this thing is just incredible. And so craft wise, it is just amazing as well, but it's all built around this really effective story that just tears me up every time I watch it.
I think, Erik, you're going back to photos and what you were saying about sort of memories, and it's just such a memory box. But for Adam in the film, it's really, you know, he pulls out that box at the beginning. He's looking through everything, and then everything sort of just kind of unfolds. But there's when he takes Harry to the house, and he's just trying to get in. He's trying to get in, and that desperation to not want to let go. It's that of looking at that photo from the beginning again, and you see that photo hundreds of times probably if you've lost a parent, or if you want to recall a memory, or go back to maybe a simpler time in your life. And I think that's why Scott's performance is so beautiful, and is the evolution of the character that we see from the beginning of the film all the way to the end is that of somebody that is still broken and needs to use his work. And we don't really see, he's a writer, but we don't really see a lot of words on the paper. We see him, we can assume that from this experience, something will come from this.
Part of it, because he's got a little bit of writer's block. It's
yeah,
kind of the thing.
Yeah, it's kind
the
of the
whole
thing.
process is going to unlock his writer's
Yeah,
block.
it's what a book that'll be, or what a screenplay that'll be. Maybe it's the one that we're watching. It's very meta in that.
I love when Jamie Bell says how much he hates writers and that they're like the worst. I'm like, okay, Andrew, you can only flagellate so much. Come on.
But I mean, you're right about it being about, even still, when you have parents alive, the things that maybe in the passage you didn't get to say, that it took years to unravel, and they're older and you're older, and so maybe the playing field is a little bit more even now than when you were an adolescent and you were discovering yourself and trying to, but you were afraid, or you didn't have someone, or they maybe didn't understand, like the Claire Foy scene where he's explaining that he was gay and he's been gay this whole time and everything, and her sort of muted, just kind of put off response to it, or kind of caught off guard, is juxtapose that to the Jamie Bell scene, which is like one of the scenes of the year. They're on the couch, and that's in a way him wanting that scene to happen, that conversation to be like that, maybe to balance out what his mother said. But there's probably more indications through memory that he's recalling that probably suggests that maybe his father would have said something like that to him, being the kind of person that he is. It's an interesting a conversation about the film in terms of what is the character's reflection and what is the actions that you really could, these characters could be, because we're seeing them all through a memory, through a childlike almost perspective at times too, right? Because that's when they die such at a young age. But then you throw that upon this relationship with Harry that he has, and how as he's trying to find closure for it, or he's opening, literally another door opens, and Paul Mescal is standing right there, Being like, let me come in, please. But then you have Harry's story and the conversations that they have and how honest they are, and how, if that's not something that's universal within just anytime you're having a relationship and you're trying to get to know someone and you have similar experiences, and hearing about how his family is as opposed to Andrew Scott in the film, those are really beautiful scenes. And they're, I mean, obviously, it's like the year of the sex scene, I guess, or whatever, but they're done so honestly, and so, they're just done within how you would assume those characters would be. But then it's not even really about that. It's about the connection like they have in the bathtub, and how devastating those conversations are around their bond and their connection. And it all leads to then really ultimately about their relationship is how safe they feel with one another. Like there's a scene at the end, but there's also like just them sitting on the couch in the montage of when they go to the club and they're doing the drugs and all that other stuff. But I think that there's a really great balance here between the past and the present and the way that Haigh is able to do it. And you're right, Josh, this is such a beautiful looking movie too. Like the club sequences, the sequence when we first are introduced to kind of Jamie Bell, when he's at a shop and they go through this field, and it's a field that's, right around the corner from where, the house is. And it's almost like kind of going through the rabbit hole.
It looks
right?
like a gay cruising.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
it's totally set up to look like
of
that.
that scene. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about it, so there should
Yeah.
spoiler heavy on this. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming so, because I would like to be.
Yeah. You can talk
Yes.
about whatever you want. It's
Yeah,
your favorite film of the year. I'm not holding anything back.
I know you said sci-fi earlier, and I don't think I would classify it quite.
Well, it's
that.
ghostly. It's a ghost story more than I would
but
say
even
that.
then,
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think one. I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday.
Yeah.
That something like this that takes a common story and puts it into a genre and a realm that is, slightly different than expected. Gives us such a great perspective on how.
Yeah. I wasn't saying that like in terms of.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I just went.
No. I meant to say like it's more of like a not a ghost story, the David Lowery film, but just a ghost story or a memory.
There's
piece.
a little bit of a supernatural,
Yes,
kind of
there's element to it.
I mean, the whole house, essentially, again, when he takes Harry to it, like this house, no, the lights are off and nobody's there, and it's on and off when it wants to be. So there's something supernatural, I would say, about it, but there's not like any beam me up Scotty moments or anything like that.
No, it's, I mean, there's there is a little bit at the end when they're having their final conversation at the dinner, because they are resolution is happening, so they are disappearing.
Do you ever think if he did he? Do you think he
weirdly? It's almost like, this is gonna sound so stupid.
No, say it.
Like Beetlejuice. When they start,
it's like in the
because it just has that moment, and I don't know.
I don't know. It almost in some ways too. It feels like very Malick in a way too, where his movies feel like there's the story here, but then like you have this other, almost feels otherworldly, even though it's still set in the world and the rules and restraints of everything that you're seeing. I mean, Malick does it more dreamlike, but in way too much voiceover. But yeah, it just feels like you're going through somebody's memory bank, and like the almost like a Mad Men sort of thing, like the carousel. You know what I mean? You're just kind of going from photo to photo to photo to moment, because that's literally what happens. Like, when he's in the pajamas, it's going literally back to the moment where, he's having to face when his parents actually died, and the moment when the police show up to the house, and how terrifying that all is.
It's
for
also
him in that moment.
ridiculously audacious, because what Haigh is doing is, I mean, he's killing parents on Christmas night. they're singing Always on My Mind to him and turning that from a relationship, like love relationship, story to a parent-child story, literally singing it right to him. And there are so many moments that are underlined, bold, italicized, and there is no subtext. The subtext is text. It is right there on the surface. And it's such a risky thing to do, because sometimes it can come off as over earnest or overly sentimental in a way that isn't effective. It's just kind of gloopy and a little silly. And it's a huge risk. He's taking risks throughout this entire movie.
Yeah.
Because he really needs the audience to kind of go with it. You have to be able to go on Adam's journey of, when does real become not real? It's a big thing that's even asked. He asks his mother, "Is this real?" And she says, "I don't know. Does it feel real?"
Yeah.
It doesn't get much more like, okay, here we are. But you really have to, as an audience, be able to accept that Andrew Scott's character Adam is going through, that we hit a point very, very quickly where things are not real.
Yeah.
And people are not real. Then we can see, now this is why we can get into like spoiler territory.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't seen it, you can stop listening.
Yes.
Because Paul Mescal's Harry, he has one scene where he is
real
and alive.
Yeah.
And nothing after that is. And there are breadcrumbs, but you really kind of get the gut punch at the end. But you still have to be on board. You have to, when he boards that train to his parents, you need to be on that train with him, because it's imperative just to be able to feel everything that's happening. Yeah. But it's also, and I know, and this isn't to slight Josh, of saying that it's, it's a specific story, but it's a universal story. I mean, it's a gay story. It's so specifically gay, because the double coming out process is such a uniquely gay thing. And Paul's Harry has his whole conversation about what it was like when he came out, and already being a black sheep of the family, and this like even separates you even further from that. And then of course my favorite conversation, when they're first kind of finally sitting together and meeting and talking, and Harry's like, "You are queer, right?" Just to make sure. And then they have that whole gay queer conversation, which again spoke to me in a way that was so funny and so real, because
I just remember you leaning forward when that happened at the screening. I was like,
when you are like,
Eric's on the train,
and you and going through generations of how we kind of went from not wanting to label ourselves at all or be labeled by somebody else, and then embracing labels, kind of where we are now, to a point where there's a lot of labels, and you need to make sure you get them right. But I loved the whole gay versus queer conversation that they have, and I love that Harry says queer takes the dick sucking out of it, and I was just like, goddamn right, sister, absolutely. That was like, it was so succinct and so funny, and there is a lot of humor in this. It is very sad and dark and everything, but there is a lot of great humor, and a lot of it does involve Paul Mescal, because he just has a charm that
he's a movie star like unlike any other we have right now.
I don't know. I mean, whatever Adam was going through, I'm sorry, but if Paul Mescal knocks on your door,
you let him in.
He he's coming in.
Yes, he is.
And
In
on-
every sense of the word.
Every sense.
in,
Yeah,
on,
good.
around,
Yeah, up and down.
Yep. Just looking it up.
Just
right there.
Gladiator 2. You know,
Exactly. Right, John. But, I mean, that was just kind of one of those funny things. I was just like, did you really close the door on Paul Mescal right now?
Like,
You dumb bitch.
yeah. Anything else you guys want to say? What a way to segue out of that. And anything, Josh, anything else you want to say about All of Us Strangers, your favorite film of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, yes, obviously, I agree that this is a very, very gay story. Yeah, but I also think that what Andrew Haigh does so well is that he is able to tackle those subjects, but also get at the very core emotion that anybody can connect to. And as I said previously, I think that's one of the things that makes Weekend so great. Is yes, this is specifically about gay men in relationships with each other, but it's also about the longing for a relationship and being unsure about how to tackle that when neither party is like super sure about that footing with each other. And for this one, it really, at the core of it, is about this story of people who feel so isolated because of pain that they carry around. And in this movie, it's about the pain with losing your parents, but that can be a source of from anybody. It can be an exploration of pain and trauma that can manifest in any part of your life, and that ultimately contributes to how much you feel lonely and how it's so necessary to make sure that you kind of recognize that and carry it with you, but also not let it control you, and to really still reach out and make those connections that will give your life the true meaning that it has. And that's what I find so effective about the film. And that's why I think Andrew Haigh is just such a masterful storyteller. He is one of my favorite directors working today. I think that he is just so great at creating stories with really, really inviting characters that move you so deeply. And that is absolutely the case with All of Us Strangers.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, Josh. I mean, this is a kind of a movie where I have this thing where, I don't know, a director really has to have a string of movies that then it makes me buy into I'll throw all caution in the wind, whatever the film is going to be. And some people are like that, and some people aren't, or some people are in a sort of a weird zone, kind of like this film, right, where you're in between, reality and a dream. And Haigh was definitely like that for me after, people, after seeing this movie, I will see anything and everything this man makes. I don't care what it is, because you're right. He just has a confidence in character and who these real or maybe not real characters are, and perspective on how they feel. And all four of these performances, Jamie Bell, Claire Foy, Andrew Scott, Paul Mescal, they are extraordinary performances. And we're already seeing critics groups and all that stuff come out, and they're not getting nearly enough attention as they deserve, because this is these are four performances that just, they have their own weight to every single one of them. And I think Scott's just absolutely tremendous in this. I know that it's not technically his first lead performance, but it feels like it. It feels like the first time, or well, not in his whole career, or television or anything like that, or the stage, but in film, it's definitely his big showcase. And these three actors are surrounding him, along with this great screenplay and this to really just give one of the best lead performances of the year, and just a really heartbreaking, beautiful performance. And it's also got one of the best needle drops and endings songs that you're going to hear in a long, long time. And if you can hear it in a theater, do, because the music in this movie, it's almost as if you're putting the characters putting the record on or putting the headphones on, and some of the dialogue from those, some of the lyrics from those songs is in the dialogue as well, and it's great. Josh, do you have any honorable mentions that you want to talk about real quick before we transition you guys out of here?
Yeah, I mean, well, I do have to say that, I mean, Oppenheimer was a movie I saw 8 times in theater. So clearly,
24
I
hours
had,
of Oppie. There you go.
yes, I technically spent 24 hours in a movie theater watching Oppenheimer. So clearly, I have some affection for that one. Also, speaking of movies that I was predestined to love, Passages was yet
Oh,
another one for
yes.
sure. Are You There, God Is Meet Margaret? I absolutely was charmed by. That's such a just a beautiful, beautiful movie. And The Zone of Interest, you mentioned it earlier. Like, I can't imagine what that like double feature was with this All for Strangers. Jesus. I mean, you talk about an emotional roller coaster right there, but like
It was
one
a
of the
day.
most
It was a day.
affecting movies I have seen in a very, very long time. And I think Jonathan Glazer is also a genius filmmaker.
Yeah, his fourth film too this year as well.
Yeah.
Put him in the same class with Hayes, like an all timer for me now. Erik,
This is such a great year of movies. I mean, every year is, but this was just,
this was incredible. I think.
I mean,
It really was, yeah.
In keeping with, yeah, you know, chaotic LGBTQs. Saltburn was a huge favorite. Fucking chaotic. As well as Josh has mentioned, Passages, because my God, chaotic bisexual.
Yes.
Insanity. But I loved Monster, which I do quantify as a queer film, very, very, very much so. I'm already such a fan of Koreeda, and I just was destroyed by Monster.
Yeah,
those child performances are incredible. And you know, Poor Things, Zone of Interest as well. Yeah, gosh, I'm looking at my list.
he's looking. Oh, he's looking at it.
There's a lot.
Now he's a
There's
cheat
a lot
sheet.
of 4.5 stars on here. May, December. Talk about queer movies that aren't queer, but they're absolutely fucking queer.
Yes. Well, I love all those. I love all those picks. I love that you guys love all of us strangers. Just quickly before we get out of here, Josh, can you tell everybody where they can just find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Jr. Parham.
And Erik Anderson.
You can find me on Twitter at awards_watch and AwardsWatch everywhere else.
Welcome back. And we just talked about a really sad movie with Erik and Josh, and now I'm here with Tyler Doster, our TV editor.
Hello.
And Dan Bayer.
Hello, everybody.
And we're going to talk about their favorite film of the year, which is also a really sad movie, but also a really beautiful movie as well. And that's Past Lives from Celine Song. And guys, Dan, I'll start with you. Why do you love Past Lives? Why is it your number one movie of the year?
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Let's just start with a small question then, Ryan.
That's the reason why we're here, Dan.
Why is Past Lives my favorite movie of the year? You know what? I don't even know that it is my favorite movie of the year. It's not the movie that I've watched the most. It's not the movie that I have immediately been like, well, that is an like all-time great film. But it is by far the one that I have thought about the most. It is the one that like worked its way deep inside my brain earlier this year when I first saw it and has refused to leave. And it is the one that has fucked me up for days on end after watching it every time I've seen it, which is 3 times now, and it there is something so beautiful about this film, about the the warmth and depth that Celine Song gives to her characters and their situation. She I saw a quote from her from a Q&A where she said that this movie is really just about 3 people who are just so kind to each other. And that is a really beautiful way of putting it, but it's about so much more than that. It takes this idea of, a what if, what could have been romance, and through that story also tells a story about growing up, a story about being an immigrant in a foreign country and connecting with your homeland. It is about moving on, but it's about how we literally live many different lives in our own one life that we get on Earth. It's about the mysticism and connections with people that run deeper than we can possibly imagine. It is about so many things, and yet it is also a perfect little almost romance. And I just love everything about it. Everything is so perfectly judged, from the direction to the scoring to the performances. And I just, every time this movie comes up in my thoughts or in conversation, I just spiral thinking about how beautiful it is and how meaningful it is and how deeply moved it makes me.
Yeah. Tyler, you're not a movie guy. You're the TV editor here at Awards Watch. So you maybe get to see, like, I don't know. How many movies do you get to see a year, Tyler?
I've watched like 70 this year.
Okay, that's pretty good.
So
That's a pretty good number for you. Because I know you're watching like 900
it is.
here. Yeah, I mean, to watch like,
It is.
I've said this many times. You either got to be a TV person or you got to be a movie person. It's really hard to be both. It really is. I don't know how even Erik does it. Like, to be able to balance it is, it's kind of insane.
Yeah.
But
considering the number of hours of TV you watched this year,
Yeah.
Tyler, 70 movies is a lot.
that's I mean, anyone's getting a gold star around here, it's Tyler, actually. Tyler, I know that you early in the year when I saw this film, you were just yelling and dying to see it, and everything. And I know you don't have like a lot of press screenings in your area or any press screenings in your area in Alabama, but you finally got to see it in a theater. And I know how deeply it moved you. And so, yeah, same question to you from Dan. Why is it stuck with you this year as your number one?
Past Lives is, you're right. I don't watch a lot of movies because I like to stick with people. Television is my favorite kind of storytelling just because I get to spend so long with people. But Past Lives is a movie that reminds me that I cannot spend too much time with some people. Celine Song's delicacy when it came to creating this entire story, I think is something that affects me because anyone that talks to me was be probably not surprised. I'm obsessed with anything about relationships, romance, anything like that. But the specificity of, is there someone out there that we may have had a run in with prior in another lifetime, or even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago? It has this certain feeling of walking into a party in your hometown and turning the corner and maybe seeing someone there that you already knew. But it also ends in such a way that reminds you they might not have ever been there for you in the first place. Past Lives is a film that I have not stopped thinking about since the first time I watched it in a theater. I went back the next week to watch it in a theater, because all I could think about was that movie and how she formatted it together. The story, to get to see these two wonderful, interesting, complex humans work through a lifetime of intimacy is really thrilling in a way that some movies don't have anymore, just because it doesn't let it linger. It doesn't let it sit with that. And in some parts of the movie where I was just holding my breath, I found myself by the end, I released with Nora when she did. And I think that's why it stuck with me so much. And also, as everyone knows, those men are beautiful. And I think that she was really a trooper for having to even look at both of them and make a decision at all.
I love that. I love that, Tyler. So I didn't see this at Sundance. It wasn't at South by, so it took me a while to see it. And I think Dan had already seen it before I had. And
yeah,
it did something that doesn't happen a lot, and Dan knows this, and Tyler knows this as well. It was the first film this year that I immediately gave 5 stars on Letterboxd to. I have this silly self-imposed rule, because one year when I first started doing podcasting and writing and editing, I gave out way too many 5-star reviews that year, and then they didn't, most of those didn't hold up. So I knew I was like, okay, I need to be more selective about this and put sort of a restraint on myself. But the minute I watched that movie, I was just like, no, this is 5 stars, and it earns it right from the beginning, right from those shots of these 2 kids that are childhood friends. Just one's going one way on one path and one is going up another path to their homes. But then over the course of the film, they literally go down different paths in their lives. And the foreshadowing that Celine Song has as a writer and as a director. And the thing about this is she's a first-time director, which is fucking insane.
And she wrote the screenplay on top of it. Like, come on.
I mean, the decision.
Which, shout out.
Yeah, I mean, the decision-making process that she had, I was able to sit down with her at Middleburg later this year, and then it made me rewatch the film and then obliterated me again. You both are right. Like, there's no villains here, right? Hollywood would take a story like this and make the husband character, or make her the bad guy for having to make this choice, or make this childhood friend sweetheart be this person that's wrecking this marriage, and it would make them all feel very guilty and angry, and there would be scenes would blow up, right? And it'd be so dramatized to the point where it would lose a lot of its authenticity. But she told me the real villain of this movie is time and the Pacific Ocean. And, and so just thinking about that over time, that's really the only person you can blame, because it's just like you're saying, Dan, it's a big what if. Like, what if I had stayed there? What if my family didn't move and have this amazing opportunity? What if after reconnecting with him over Zoom, what if we had gone and met up, or I had met him halfway, or he had met me? What if I didn't meet my husband? What if I didn't become a playwright? And this being a sort of semi-autobiographical take on what happened to Celine Song in real life, and Greta Lee's extraordinary performance as playing this, this sort of vessel for what Song went through. It all leads up to, okay, well, the biggest what if is, what if he came back into my life? And what if he did actually take me up on an offer and did come to New York? What would happen then? And the movie, I think, just does all these conversations and all these feelings that all of them have, all 3 of these characters, so perfectly in trying to explain how weird of a situation this is, but also how necessary it is for all of them to grow, especially for Greta Lee in this, or Celine Song, even in this way. And so I think that it's, for a debut, one of the greatest debuts maybe we've ever had. And I usually don't throw hyperbole out a lot. But I hard pressed to think of a debut over the last 10, 15, 20 years that's kind of just gobsmacked me. It's also, it really is a great New York film in using
my God,
the city as another character with inside of it and these locations. I mean, also one of the best first scenes of the year, right? Because we all people watch, we all just kind of assume what the relationship and what these three people are going through. Maybe if, you know, the three of us are sitting in a bar and we see them, you know, what they're saying, what they're doing, what they're not. But then when you actually get into the story and we come back to that later, so much has happened. Yeah, it's astonishing. It's an astonishing film.
Yeah, Shabir Kirshner, shout out to the cinematographer, because this is maybe the best New York has looked on screen and maybe since Manhattan. It's absolutely gorgeous, and as someone who lives here, I didn't think that it was possible to film the city in a way that would show its like sort of ordinariness, but also its beauty. And like they found just these perfect locations with perfect lighting that just make for a really magical experience of the city. And something that makes it even more magical that I just love so much is that whenever whenever Nora and Haesung are spending time just alone together, if you watch, everyone around them is coupled up. They're all with someone. And it presents this world of like where everyone around you is really happy and in love, and it's all pushing them to do to this point. But that point no longer exists for them because they're not the same people they were when they knew each other. And the whole movie is both of them figuring that out. So when you get to that end, which just never fails to wreck me even when I know it's coming. It's just you realize how thoroughly Celine Song has played you. Like by the time you get to that scene. And especially with like, God damn it, maybe like the best last line in a movie of any movie this year. And it's just 3 words that summarize their whole relationship and the whole idea, one of the big ideas at the heart of the movie. And like Tyler was saying, like she finally lets go of all this tension and breathes and just breaks down from everything that she's been holding inside. And you realize that it's like a weight has been lifted, which is not what you expect. But when you look back on it and when you realize that everything that this movie is about, which is just the most incredible thing, how layered the screenplay is. I mean, you can almost tell that she's a playwright, but even still, it's just uncommonly deep for a first screenplay. And God, then like every single shot in this is perfect. Like, I don't think there's a single bad composition. The editing makes everything move so smoothly, and the score it makes me angry that it's not on the short list. And
Yes.
because talking about something that really captures the exact feeling that you want the whole movie to have and deploys it in just the right amount. Oh my God. Someone please stop me before I just dominate this whole
Shout out to Christopher Bear and Daniel Rawson, who composed the score, who also did work on High Maintenance, which is an incredible TV show. So I'm hoping that more people watch it. But I'm just going to continue what Dan's talking about, because it starts and you think the movie is asking, what if the one who got away came back? And then by the time the movie is over, you realize the movie's actually asking you, what if they were meant to go? And I think that's so interesting because you're not expecting that. Like Dan was saying, you're You're spending this whole movie until you realize you have been totally finessed by the end because you have made the same epiphany Nora is making. And it hurts to make that epiphany, no matter if it's Nora or you're living through that. Most people, a lot of people that are going to be listening to this, I'm sure, even if you've never been deeply in love, it really does not matter. That kind of connection is very universal, just the intimacy of it. And I think anyone watching it is going to have that kind of relief because even if you haven't experienced it yet, you can see what she's going through and you know how you would feel. And I think that Celine's song is so poised to be just a master if she's going to start this way. I cannot wait to see how this could continue. I hope that she doesn't direct anything else that makes me cry, because I cried so hard both times in theaters. I'm scared to watch it again, even though I bought it the moment it was released. But I think it's so interesting when movies ask you questions that you think you want to know the answer to, but by the end, it's like, maybe this was too much for me right now. Maybe I just wanted to watch a movie, but I loved it so much. And I think that it's so much fun when you realize that you're getting to have that kind of experience while watching a quick 2 hours. And then it's over and you're crying.
Yeah, I mean, she's already at work in production on her next film, and she'll probably have it sooner rather than later. Maybe late this year, maybe next year for sure. I'm 2024 or 2025, not 2023. Jesus. But that would be a quick turnaround for her. But no, I think what you're both saying is then obviously the main theme of the film, that was kind of brought up, and that it kind of all connects everything to the story, which is the idea of yin yang, and the idea of that in this life we may not be meant for one another, but in obviously a past life we were soulmates and the stars did align, and
but maybe it's not in the next life,
or maybe in the next life. And it's not even just about romantic connection, it's just about any human connection whatsoever. It's just about, like, maybe we were enemies in last life, but in the next one we'll be best of friends. And so the idea of this being used here to then talk about, but then in practice, what is going on with this, I mean, it's very it seems simple on paper, but it is very complicated in terms of its feelings. I mean, like, Arthur is I think one of the, you're talking about, Dan, as a character. So it could feel very like, oh, okay, well, I'm the outsider, not from your background, not of your ethnic background, not even from your childhood. And I'm just like this, like he talks to her in bed, like I'm like this, feels like this guy in the way.
Yeah.
And there's so much richness to his character. And then of course, Nora and what she says and what she doesn't say to him, because she's going through so much as Jesus is coming back into her life and picking up. It's not even that it's about her picking up the childhood part of it. It's then that she's also picking up the second strand of history that they have from the Skype calls and the reconnection. So this is technically a second reconnection that they had. And there's regret on both sides from that initial reconnection from when they were children. And I love the way that he has like his backpack on, and the way that everything is, like his khakis are fit and everything. And when he walks into Arthur and Nora's house, Arthur just kind of looks at him being like, well, shit, how am I supposed to compare to any of this? Like, this is like, it's almost like his worst nightmare. Yeah. But then when they're talking at the bar, when she goes to the bathroom and both men are just there at the bar, and he's like, I'm not here to ruin your life. I'm not here to take her away or, be the Hollywood ending. I'm here to figure out what this even means for me. And then that whole linger at the cab, and then the tracking shot of her walking back and falling into Arthur's arms, and how Celine Song talked to me about how she was the only one that was controlling that Uber and when it was going to get there. And she held and held and held. And as you, as an audience member, you are on the edge of your seat. You think Tom Cruise could do tension like this? You got another thing coming. Like I was on the edge of my seat.
So good.
When it was going to come and just how they linger with one another. And then, yeah, I mean, there's a scene where he's coming out of his hotel room and he looks on the ground and it's raining, and just the rain coming down on the ground in New York City. I don't think I've ever seen it more accurately depicted. I've been to, Dan, you live in New York. I've been a couple times. It's like you understand everything about this place perfectly and how it is for a first timer experience, but then also somebody that's lived there their entire life, that somebody that would know the places and make those places because she's been in those places before, Celine song, and make them iconic, memorable locations. It's I would say like Manhattan, When Harry Met Sally, something like this. These are movies that use this vast city, this most important city, and use it in such an intimate way that feels like a haven of then being able to have those characters be able to just speak their comfortable truths. And I don't know. I just, again, she's a first time director. This is insane work by someone.
Give her flowers.
Yes.
I hope she continues to be a writer on Prime Video's The Wheel of Time.
Was
Which is an excellent series. And she was a staff writer for season 1, and I'm pretty sure she wrote an episode for season 2, or at least co-wrote it, because I remember seeing her name and I was like, hey girl.
Wow.
She doesn't need to do that anymore. She doesn't need to do that.
No, let me have my fun.
She's graduated. She's graduated.
Graduated.
Yeah, she's graduated from television. She's now making serious work. Yeah, you heard me.
Well, okay, so let's just
We're not gonna fight with
completely align that by talking about how those two scenes that you mentioned, Ryan, the scene between Nora and Arthur, when he's like, in the Hollywood version of this, I would be the evil American husband coming in between true love.
He's like literally
and
talking it
like,
out.
Yeah, and she's like, shut up. Like, I'm with you. You're the person I want. And he's like, yeah, so you're saying it would have been anybody that you met at that writer's workshop? And she's like, well, but it was you. So what are we talking about?
Yeah.
And like that scene, and then the scene at the bar when it's between the two guys, two of my favorite scenes in any movie of this year, and it is because of how open it is to that third wheel perspective. And
there's a language barrier, but even though like Arthur knows, but like Hae-sung, it's clearly he's limited in English, Arthur's limited,
and how like Celine song said, is like just how the kindness between these characters, between all of them, to and for each other, is just so striking. And I think it was like Roger Ebert says that like the movies that make you cry, you don't necessarily cry movies because something sad happens. You cry when people are good. And that is like this movie to a T. When Hae-sung says to Nora, I didn't think liking your husband would hurt this much. Just like tear my heart out. Please stomp on it. Like, God.
Dan, that's what the heterosexuals call touchdown.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
What the fuck? And when Arthur, I think it's Arthur, says to Hae-sung, like, maybe I think this means that we have some kind of Indian too. And I'm like, oh my God. Why? Why are you so nice?
Yeah, these people are way too nice to each other.
Way too nice to each other. But like also, like, that's the beautiful thing about it, though, is like any other movie from any other writer or director would it would not end this way. Like this, and it's like it plays you for a fool because it works with all these tropes. Like Celine's song knows all the romantic gestures and all the things that we expect to happen, and god damn her, she weaponizes those tropes against us because we're waiting for it. We're waiting for that kiss at the end. But Deus Ex Uber, and then they don't go in for it, but you realize that they were never going to. And it's awful, but it's also exactly right. It's just perfect. And I admit, the first time I saw this, I did not like the ending at all. I'm like, why are we suddenly ending on him? This is not his story, blah, blah, blah. But it's such a beautiful mirror to the shot when at the start of the second act, when Nora is coming back to New York and she's driving over the bridge with that sun on her face and that Greta Lee's just like beautiful smile. And it's when he's leaving, like, this is what is meant to happen. This is how it was always supposed to happen.
Yeah. Like the duality, right, Dan, of her going to New York to chase her dreams and him leaving New York, not necessarily with his dreams dashed, but understanding his place in this whole, in their paths. And so she's entering, he's leaving, she's going down one way and he's going down another.
Yep, and how for her, she was a person who leaves, like, oh my god, and now she is a person who stays with Arthur. I mean, come on. Like, if you don't get emotional thinking about this stuff, you may not have a heart. I don't know what to tell you.
Tyler, do you have anything else about past lives that you want to say?
I'm just a bitch who likes to yearn, and if you also like to learn or yearn,
I guess so. Learn to yearn.
You are more than welcome in my inbox to tell me who you thought about during past lives. I want to know.
Yes.
I won't tell us all, but you are all, anyone listening to this, you can follow my Twitter and get right in the DMs and tell me who past lives made you think about.
Honestly,
This was the thing for me. Like, I got home from that first screening and like was thinking about like 3 different childhood friends that I have like never seen in like for decades plural, and just like it wrecked me. It wrecked me. I was spiraling for weeks about this. It's awful.
No, I was the same way. I was thinking about like, I was just thinking about like the people that you spend chunks of your life with, and then just in a and it's just time, circumstances, the evolution of yourself, the evolution of becoming who you are and who you are at your best. Because I think like once you get to your 30s and 40s, you've grown up, but 2, you've settled down in the places where you're at, and you found for the most part your purpose and what you're going to do in your life. But then that's, it's really funny. Like, this is a movie like that is made for even an older generation. Cause like at times, what do we always see? Like our parents do, they do the lineage and the blood testing, like where we're from and all, find out your extended such and such and such and such. What is that? The forever, or like me 23 or whatever the hell that thing is called. What is that thing?
23
and me. Yeah. And so like in a sense, like this is kind of our generation's version of that. It's also our generation's version of Brief Encounter, which is a movie that I was thinking about a ton in this, because like when they're going on their day excursions, in Brief Encounter or going to the movies, right? Well, they're going on the subway or they're going to the carousel, or in this film. And in that movie, you never get to see the quote unquote Arthur scenes until like the very, very end, right? And so in this, we get Arthur at home playing video games, and then having those conversations of like he knows where she's at, and he's in a lot of ways in like contributing to her going down this rabbit hole and being like, yeah, sure, like do it. You got to figure it out. But then as it goes on, it's like, wait a minute here. Like, am I like helping you like get on like the guy to come on his white horse and take you off? Like what?
This would be the most epic "Am I the asshole?" Reddit thread.
Yeah, but like it's two writers then having a conversation about the tropes that they would normally write about in film or stage work, like her and her husband do. And I just gotta say, I can't wait to see Challengers, because that's going to be a different kind of three-way, love triangle sort of movie in 2024. Can't wait for those interviews and the comparisons of what they were both writing at that time. But no, I just think it's a beautiful film, and I think it's it was so funny. I've been saying this, and I said this to you, Dan, and Tyler. I think I've said it to you as well. It's like, this movie dominated the first half of our year, and everybody just absolutely couldn't stop talking about it. And usually 9 times out of 10, because there's always one where you're just like, no, that's not as good as everyone says it is. 9 times out of 10, it ends up being as really good as it is. And I think it even exceeded those expectations, because Dan was like hyping this up for me like crazy. And then I was a mess coming out of it. But yeah, and I'm just so glad that people are still talking about it, and still, like Dan and Tyler and myself, like, wrecked by its ending and these 3 performances. But really I think the big discovery of the year, which is Celine's song, like of actors and writers and directors, the biggest discovery this year was Celine's song, and this epic love story about human connection. Guys, do you have some honorable mentions, maybe some other films that didn't make it, but ones that you want to highlight as some of your other favorites of the year? Tyler, I'll start with you. Tyler, you're muted, sweetheart.
Okay. Yeah, some of my other favorites of the year are Anatomy of a Fall, The Taste of Things, All of Us Strangers, Monster, and Asteroid City, I would say.
Asteroid City.
I love Asteroid City. To hell with anyone putting Asteroid City on a worse list. You know who you are.
To hell.
You know who you are out there. To hell with that. That was bullshit. I saw that last week, and I was so angry, because that movie rules. And like no one got angry at it when it came out, and then all of a sudden it's on the worst. See more movies. If Asteroid City is on your worst list, you need to see more movies.
Yeah. Also, Tyler, I love that you loved The Taste of Things, because I was so hoping you would see that movie.
Who doesn't love like a movie where it's like 2.5 hours of just cooking? Like best meals ever.
Oh, Juliette Binoche cooking.
Yeah.
The first 30 minutes was like being in a restaurant, just watching them. Like, I was entranced.
You cannot watch that movie on an empty stomach. If you do that, then good luck to you, because you're going to get really hungry. Yeah. And then you're going to make some food decisions you're going to make some food like dinner decisions after that movie that are probably going to hurt your
Not going to be good.
Yeah, it's not going to be good. Dan?
Yeah.
Favorite other honorable mention movies?
Yeah, so the movie that I have seen more times than anything else this year is Bottoms.
Oh, how many times did you see Bottoms?
I have seen Bottoms now 5 times.
Okay, I'm at 4, but you saw Bottoms with. I
saw it with you.
Yeah, you did. That was
at the world premiere at South by Southwest.
Oh, wild!
Just wild.
We had the best time. the best on that night.
This was my first time at South by Southwest, and you had told me that the audiences at South by Southwest are super incredible, and they did not disappoint between that John Wick Chapter 4 screening, which shout out to John Wick Chapter 4.
Shout out to the woman who screamed every time Keanu Reeves got kicked on his spine. Get up, Keanu! And like, and to be like, we were like 4 rows away from Reeves and Chad Stahelski, and to see his like reactions every time like the audience was so into it, and insane.
It was great. But yeah, Bottoms, the screams that erupted in that theater at the final fight scene, it was fantastic, just absolutely fantastic. I also have to shout out Rye Lane, my favorite more traditional romantic comedy of the year, and Fallen Leaves, which just the most delightful little romance I've seen. Huge shout out to if you haven't seen it yet, go to your theater and see Godzilla -1.
There you
God
go.
damn it, because
goddamn right.
God damn. So good. So good. And then like if there's one film from this year that I think will like be studied in film schools and dissected and broken down and just analyzed for years, decades after this, it's The Zone of Interest.
Yeah.
Which just stands head and shoulders on a technical level above every other thing that has been released this year that has gotten the most visceral reaction out of me twice now, because I put myself through it a second time to make sure that it wasn't a fluke, and like, oh my God. But yeah, that movie is something else.
I've been telling people about Zone of Interest that it's a movie you have to go for a long walk afterwards, because you've got to
or take a shower.
I think a walk, depending. Well, maybe a shower depending on when you're seeing it, and if you're watching it at home on a screener. But I mean, some of the most inventive, like bone-chilling sound work I've heard in a movie.
Oh my
God! In the last 10 years.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's just Jonathan Glazer, though. I mean, if you've seen Under the Skin, you know that the man is insane with sound work. So no, I think that's genius stuff. Just like Celine's song with Past Lives. Tyler, can you tell everybody where they can find you on the internet?
You can follow me on Twitter at Tyler M. Doster.
Dan Bayer.
You can follow me on Twitter at Dance and Dan on Film, on Letterboxd, and post at Dance and Dan.
Welcome back. I'm joined by Sophia Ciminello. Hi, Sophia.
Hello.
And new show for the new year. So a new contributor, Cody Dericks.
Hello.
First time on the AwardsWatch podcast. You guys are here to talk about your favorite film of the year, which is May December. So sorry, Sophia, we're going to go with Cody first. He's new.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just going to say, you should have said May December.
May December. Yeah, that's right. About Gracie. Yeah, hot dogs and lisps. That's the name of the game. Cody, why is this your favorite movie of the year?
Wow, Hot Dogs and Lisps is my memoir, my epitaph. There's something important to me right there. Just very, very true. Yeah, this movie, wow. I felt like I was watching. My brain, my instinct is to go with some sort of sports metaphor here, some sort of a tennis match or something, some sort of dueling, situation. But everything about this movie is just so finely tuned to match Todd Haynes' vision. There's not a wasted line or scene or shot or line reading. And you can really feel every single actor in it participating with full enthusiasm. with full appreciation for what the script is going for and what everything Todd Haynes is bringing to the screen. It's just one of those movies. I feel like there's one or two every year where I watch and just really speak to me because I love films that have, to quote Kristen Stewart, very potent meaning, where every single line has some sort of impactful resonance beyond what the characters maybe even know they're saying. Just such depths to the screenplay. And, you know, we can obviously talk about the themes and the tone, the wild tone shifts that have people really confused as to even how to place or feel about this movie. But the whole time, even with these shifting elements, Todd Haynes is just in total control of telling this story that is on one hand ridiculous and on one hand horrifying, which is a really difficult balancing act that I don't think most directors would be able to figure out, and he's able to do it seemingly in his sleep, which we've seen before in his work, so it shouldn't be too surprising. But yeah, this movie just blew me away. I loved it on second viewing. Just can't wait to keep watching May December.
Sophia, same question.
Yeah, I mean, 2023 has been such an incredible movie year, I think. And before I saw May December, I was so excited for it, but I just, I didn't put, I think, too high of expectations on it just because I was so happy with the quality of movies that I've gotten so far this year. And also, I just thought, Todd Haynes with Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman, something would have to go seriously wrong for me not to like this movie, whatever it may look like. But from the second that we hear that blaring score from the go-between and we get the title card and we see the font, and I'm a big font person when it comes to movies. If you have a good font, Rosemary's Baby, I'm in. But when we see right in the beginning of the film the eggs and the like caterpillar and the butterfly and this metaphor with the score, like you have this delicate image, but then you have this loud noise. And that was when I first was like, oh my God, what is he doing here? And it reminded me of how I felt about The Power of the Dog and Tar, my favorite movies in the years prior, where you see an image or you hear a sound or something, you see something that a character's doing, and it makes you really uneasy and it forces you to pay attention and be a very active participant for the entire film. And that's what May December does. You are always on edge or feeling a little bit uneasy. You're laughing at things and thinking, am I supposed to be laughing at this? You feel really sad and devastated at certain moments. I find these characters to feel, very heightened at times, but also very real at other times. And that, I think, is the Haynes magic for sure. It's also Sammy Birch's screenplay, which I think is absolutely brilliant and flawless. And we also just have these perfect performances from Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore, who know exactly, I think, what people think of them as actresses, what their skill sets are. Natalie Portman, she's an actress who is someone I think people think of when they think of artifice and portraying people who, feel a little bit more out there. And Julianne Moore, we know she can go for it too. I just saw Magnolia again. But then we have Charles Melton, who is just this incredible star in this movie, and his performance becomes more and more heartbreaking as I watch it. And that, I think, that's the brilliance of the movie. It's actor focused, it's so layered, it's really devilish, and I can't wait to keep watching it again and again.
Yeah, spoiler alert to anyone out there, this is actually my number 2 film of the year. So getting to talk with it about it with you guys, it's great. I've seen it 3 times, and I've seen it through different perspectives. I've seen it just through the film in general, the first go round, and then I was watching it the second go round, looking through Natalie Portman's perspective, because the first go round you're kind of just taken aback by everything, and it's there's a lot, like Cody, you're mentioning, there's just so much going on here, and it's just a tightrope that Todd Haynes is sort of dancing on with you as an audience, where between the absurdity of this story and these this actress and this larger than life figure that Julianne Moore is playing opposite the actress played by Natalie Portman in the film, and their sort of relationship, and how how someone can dive deep into portraying someone that's based on a true story. I mean, you know, everyone's going crazy over, you know, how actors portray real life people. I mean, just look at the online discourse with somebody like Bradley Cooper, for Christ's sake. So in general, I think that if you look at it through the more important aspect of this film, that's where the comedy lies. That's where the chess game, if you will, is really at play, and it's devilishly funny, and it's absurd. It's over the top, and I think of like the moment when Gracie is crying about the returned cake, and she's mad about, you know, Elizabeth, and she's like, "Ah, Elizabeth," you know what I mean? And it's kind of how they are throughout the rest of the film, even from like the moment that, you know, do you know me? Yeah, I think I know you. And there's just so many great lines from Sammy Birch. But then the third time I watched it entirely through Charles Milton's perspective, from Joe's perspective. And that's where the tragedy really lies in this movie. If you just watch it through that character's perspective, I can then understand why everyone would say that this is not a comedy or this is not a good time, because that's where that truth sort of lies in there about how, yes, this is all really funny and we're examining this larger than life story built, you know, kind of like out of the tabloids. And, you know, Gracie is this character that is a very unreliable narrator. But then you have the other side of it, which is this loss of innocence, and this manipulation, this abuse that has not been talked about for 20 something years. And how Joe is essentially going to have an empty nest and be with Gracie alone for the first time since you know, they were at the pet shop, and it's terrifying from Joe's perspective. And the more he kind of unravels, or that Elizabeth unravels him, the more and more he has questions about everything. And then that final scene where he's just standing by the fence, and it could be a sense of freedom, but it's also maybe a sense that the wheel is going to keep spinning and he's going to get back to being trapped again. We don't see Joe and Gracie after their big confrontation in the bedroom. We don't see them together by the end of the film. So is that a sign of things to come, or is he just going to go back to tending to those bugs and living a very lonely life, you know, waiting for the kids to come home, which is really, really sad when you think about it. But yeah, I mean, like between hot dogs and bugs and, you know, and crazy children from another marriage, this movie has a lot of humor. And Sophia, you're right. It reminded me a lot of like watching Tar, where there's a very serious subject matter behind it, but there's also this dark wit to it as well. And Haynes is somebody that, I mean, is very, very close to my heart this year, because we started Director Watch, and he was the first director that we did. So me and Jay watched all of his films in anticipation for this, and it really felt like he was going back to the domesticity of Safe or Far From Heaven, but examining it in a modern sense, in a modern lens, and it being really terrifying and having a lot to say. And he stepped away from really screenwriting, but he's in a lot of ways, since he's stepped away from writing his own scripts, he's really honed in on theme and tone. And yeah, I think it's one of the most fascinating films of the year. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, something I think Todd Haynes is clearly very fascinated by is the Americentric kind of nurturing of the heterosexual unit. And oftentimes he explores these in, like you said, the past. You know, we get Far From Heaven is the 50s, Carol's the 50s. Is Safe a period piece? I know it came out in the 90s. I haven't seen it in a long
Safe
time.
is kind of like towards the 80s. Like it's kind of like an allegory for the AIDS epidemic and everything going on in the 80s. It's
not as far back of a period piece, maybe as some of his others. Yeah,
still familiar enough, but definitely not as as far back as, like you're saying, like Carol or
Right. Well,
or even
similarly,
like
this takes place
Dark
in,
Waters, in a sense, you know, like
yeah,
that's going back as well too, about a family.
this takes place in 2015, so it's similarly just slightly removed, but an era that has enough perspective. But anyway, a lot of times he likes to explore these units that seem typical on the surface and then have a wrench thrown in them, whether it's in Carol and Far From Heaven, one of the partners is gay, or in Safe, she has this crisis. And in this, it's the fact that their relationship was founded on a bed of distrust and manipulation and abuse. And I think in doing so, he kind of likes to look at the concessions and compromises that typical male-female couples have to make to remain happy with each other, but are also allowed to be unexamined because their relationship, again, is so nurtured and cultivated by the American family system. And in looking at these relationships that have some sort of either absurdist bent or horrifying undertone to them, he's able to kind of point out the more normalized tragedies and horrors that accompany a lot of these relationships. And again, he's always doing this in usually some sort of suburban environment or middle-class environment where it's just people who have been so twisted by the idea of chasing an ideal that they make so many concessions and compromises against their own soul. And that's the way he's able to do that with, like you said, still strange humor and entertainment value is just amazing.
Yeah. No, that's such a good point. And I have thought a lot about the setting because originally this film was supposed to be set in New England in Camden, Maine, but Haynes moved it to Savannah. And I think that that is so key because the environment and the society, like you're talking about, Cody, are these really important things for Haynes and for the characters in his films. But here we have this southernness of everything that I think is baked into the relationship, the way that the community interacts with them, and this kind of, faux protection, right? Like everyone is gossiping about them, but they also are fearful of Elizabeth coming in and disrupting something that exists, right? There's a certain, they want things to stay copacetic. And I feel like that is a really interesting wrinkle to it when you have this disruptor like Elizabeth who comes in and suddenly, right, everything could change. We see the layers peel back and there's something darker underneath. And with Savannah too, you have this like more, there's a haunted quality to the city. It holds on to things historically. It's also just sticky and humid. And I feel like that adds something to this story as well that just makes it feel, I don't know, it's beautiful and it's gross at the same time. And that's something I think Haynes he's so good at. And you talking about, the aspects of these like hetero relationships that he unpacks. One of the things that I think is really interesting that I heard him mention in a Q&A was that he thought that Gracie, and he discussed this with Julianne Moore, she had what he called princess syndrome, which is that she considers herself this damsel in distress and that Joe is going to climb up the tower and save her from her domestic life. But at the same time, this domestic life and this like ultra feminine, very fragile person is something that like she clings to as a safety net. So it's like she's upholding this southern, like very like male female relationship ideal, but at the same time, she thinks that Joe is going to be a person who can save her from that. And I think that that's such a fascinating dynamic that Haynes digs into for sure.
Yeah, I noticed on this rewatch that there's so many scenes where there's like three or four where a character will be outside in central Savannah and there'll be either what's a history walking tour going behind them or a ghost tour. And they're always
Yeah.
talking about, yeah, in this tree she was hanged and over here this happened. And like you said, it's this town that holds on to its horrifying nature and like codifies it, which is again so American to take these horrible stories and turn them into heroic tales.
Yeah.
And the way that the community nurtures Gracie through, like you said, the baking and she's going to, these flower classes. It's also part of Gracie's performance of herself, where she's projecting this idea of, again, I think you're the princess syndrome is so apt. She's somebody that's delicate and needs help, but is, always there to lend a helping hand if need be. Even her lisp is disarming. It gives her this childlike quality almost, which makes you think she's not a threat, which makes you think that she's somebody to be pitied or helped again. When really she's the one pulling all the strings. She's the one who's in charge, despite what she says to Joe or later in the movie.
I mean, it's even what she says to Elizabeth. She's as unreliable of a person you can count on, and Elizabeth is waiting on every bated breath for her response to questions. And that's what's so interesting about Elizabeth, is that she's coming in and she is poking the bear. She is this place that they have been settled from the tabloids, from boxes of shit showing up at their doorstep for forever. They have built a semi-normal routine, and anytime you have a routine upset, some things are going to happen. And I mean, the community is in on it. That's what's so interesting about it being from the South, is that it is a tabloid and it is a scandal, but they have surrounded themselves with her and almost enabled her to get away with the act that she has. I mean, she's living in the same town, miles probably away from the house that she used to live with her ex-husband, the children that she used to be a part of their life every single day. And yet she's actually got a better setup than she had probably before. She's right on the water. She's baking constantly. She's got all these stories about her brothers. If you want, how many brothers does she have? She's got a friendliness like neighbor next door, and everyone has sort of just allowed her to continue after doing something completely terrible. And I think that it reminds me a lot of the sort of gossipy nature of Far From Heaven, of also even Sarah Paulson's character a little bit in Carol too. These people that are communicative vessels for our main character to then either carry out or condemn their actions, or to question exactly what they're doing. And at least for Gracie, as we are seeing Elizabeth trying to play essentially a detective to try to find out who this person really is that she's playing, we're seeing Gracie unravel a little bit, but she's always a step ahead still too. And I love that bit at the end where you think that this is a calculated move by her son to try to get onto the production of it, and that it's lawsuit. But then right at the end, she's like, no, I talked to him about it. That was a silly little thing, and you think you know me, but you actually don't. And I think Elizabeth is interesting because we think that how much that she's upsetting Gracie and Joe, but then we see her go down the rabbit hole just as much, and how disturbed and how troubling she is. I mean, I think of the line, everyone goes to the hot dogs and some other lines that maybe Gracie say, but the line of the movie for me, and shows just how kind of sick Elizabeth as a character is when there are a bunch of photos and different child actors that are being sent to her by the director, and she's like looking at pictures of Joe from his past, and she's looking at these like really skinny 15-year-olds, and she's like, yeah, I don't think they're hot enough. And the director says on the phone to her, I think you need to come home. That is the epitome of everything in this movie. It's like, maybe you need to get the hell out of here, because this is such a insidious environment that you are surrounding yourself in, even to the point where she's like throwing away her fiance off the phone, right, and lying and having this this one night stand to not only get information from Joe, but also to feel even closer to Gracie in that moment, right, of now I know the temptation of what she had. It's an astonishing performance from Natalie Portman, in my opinion.
I love Natalie Portman in this movie, and I think the Elizabeth character is fascinating. I think what Elizabeth doesn't know or anticipate maybe when she comes to town is that I think she expects, she's the researcher, she's the one who isn't a criminal, right? She expects to have the upper hand, I think. But what she doesn't know right away, I think, is that Gracie has been creating a myth with Joe for years, right? And she wants to protect something. There's something that she has created that she is possessive of and wants to protect. And Elizabeth doesn't know that Gracie is the better actress because she's been performing for so long in order to convince herself of something, in order to convince others of what her relationship means to her, what it is. And this is so interesting too, because the women in this story, it is a melodrama, but they're not typical melodrama characters in the way that women usually operate within that genre, which I find really interesting because the men tend to follow them, which is really unique, I think, again. But like when Gracie, there's a line that she says to Elizabeth that stood out to me on this rewatch when she says, "Do you actually sit around and think about your history?" to Elizabeth when she's digging back into and trying to find out more information about her. And I think that because Elizabeth is an actor and she's trying to get inside, right, the mind of the subject and figure out how to emulate her or imitate, however you want to, interpret the difference between those things. I think what we see then is her becoming more like Gracie in those dark ways, like you mentioned, Ryan, with that line about the kids and the casting, or is she uncovering those things that were already within herself? Like when we see her at the school and that kid jumps up and taps the sign, right, to like impress her. And she has this amazing little look that she gives, which I just think is so funny. And again, it's just, I think, a masterclass from Natalie Portman. She really understands also that this character, she's not a Meryl Streep or a Natalie Portman or a Julianne Moore. She is, I described her earlier as like a Lacey Chabert Lifetime movie type, not an Oscar winner that we might think she might be at the beginning of the movie.
Right. The parallel I drew was I thought it was supposed to be Ellen Pompeo because this Nora's
Oh
Ark
yeah.
sounds kind of Grey's Anatomy like. No shade to Ellen Pompeo, but I think just the level of stardom and accolades is comparable. And yeah, I mean, I was really struck on this viewing of the last line of the film, which I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like she's on this movie set and she says something to the extent of it's beginning to feel more real. Which, to your point, Sophia, is she uncovering something within herself? Is she, doing the classic bad method acting thing we hear all about, where people just become way too consumed with the character to the point of blurring the lines of their own personality in the character? And I think that makes sense because she's been observing somebody who's so finely tuned their own performance. So when you see somebody like that, you want to crack in and see what exactly is making them tick, because it's just fascinating to imagine somebody who, even though she says she lives an unexamined life, is totally calculated and precise in every single moment of her life, everything she says, everything she does to somebody else. And you have to be when the cameras have been on you this long. They've been on her longer than they've been on Natalie Portman's actress character.
I think also character we have to talk about is Joe. Yeah, and I think the performance of the year from Charles Milton. I can't get this performance out of my head. I feel like it came out of nowhere. Also, too, is like a guy that's mostly known for Riverdale, and I had the chance to interview him, and just a really sweet, nice guy. But he's playing kind of a sweet, but also very scarred human being here. And I had so many notes about him on the third watch, including, I think one of the key scenes of the movie, it leads up to the smoking pot and like the ruined or like trying not to ruin a memory with his son. But I think of that scene with his dad and how again, that's another relationship that Joe has had where you feel like there is so much unsaid. This whole movie is a foreshadow. Every scene at the beginning foreshadows to the end. And I mean, like, you're talking about the ending, which is up there with Tar and being one of the most like darkly hilarious, like, oh, we did all this so for essentially the same Lifetime movie that was made before. But for Joe, I mean, he's talking about getting his dad over to the graduation for the twins and everything. Like, it's like, this is all normal. Like, everything about this situation's been normal. And his dad is essentially like, yeah, you'll just be able to, once they're gone, be able to start your life. You'll be able to find new things. And usually when that happens, like when all of us went off to college or went off to be adults, our parents were in their 50s or 60s, and he's 36. You know what I mean? And what is his potential? What is the rest of his life? What is the potential that Gracie will allow him to have is the other thing you have to consider as well. And how she can't function if a cake is sent back. How is she going to function if he goes away? And it's that control, and it's being trapped inside a box, inside a cage. It reminded me a lot of Sofia Coppola's Priscilla in a lot of ways too, about these unstoppable forces controlling individuals inside a relationship dynamic. And I was kind of blown away by the end, because once again, he finally like gets down his guard, and he has this moment with Elizabeth, and you see that like somebody actually wants to get to know him. They want to actually be close to him, kind of like with Gracie. He gets this attention, and she says a similar line like his dad, like, well, you know, you'll be fine, you'll be able to start anew. And then when he realizes he's been manipulated, it completely just shatters him. And again, he's been abused again, and the cycle has continued. And this character, even though he has these 3 beautiful children, they're all made in light of tragedy and abuse and unspoken things. And Milton is carrying all this burden with him, and giving this quiet powder keg performance that just builds until it explodes at the end.
Yeah, I think Charles Melton, what's interesting for me is that when I first saw the movie, I have to say his performance, it didn't stick with me initially in the same way that the other two did. Some of that is just me loving the art of high actressing, I will say, and just preferring Moore and Portman on the first go. But the more I've watched it, the more I consider his performance and really see its brilliance. And I think the first thing that I think of when I think of him in the movie is his physical performance. The way that he carries himself, the way that he enters a room, the way that he sits on a couch, he looks like a 13-year-old boy. It is so uncanny in just how he moves like a teenager, but he's a man in his 30s. So he's able to hold both of those identities and show this arrested development that he has, while also showing his age at the same time. It's a really, really interesting thing that he does, I think, in the film. And that scene that you mentioned, Ryan, with his dad, I think what's so heartbreaking about this character in the movie is that you notice we have 2 smoking scenes, like the parallel that Haynes constructs there, one with Joe's dad and one with Joe's son. And again, it just is so painful to think of that line again. I'm paraphrasing when he says, you know, I can't tell if we're connecting or if I'm creating a bad memory for you. And how that is just something that I think persists as a fear for parents, regardless of age or generation. But I think it's also interesting how this film, especially with Joe, discusses race, because there's a line earlier in the movie where they mention that Gracie mentions that he was the only Korean family, and they note that he was half, which is just an interesting tidbit that Haynes includes there. Another thing where he, I think, really likes to dig into the various identities of the characters and what that could mean for power dynamics and for the story that unfolds.
Right. He also mentions that because he was different in this community as a kid, other girls stayed away from him, which is contradicted by Gracie's line about, well, he was with more women than me, which calling women, whatever. It's crazy. But it just shows that, she was able to take these elements that were insecurities for him and turn them into things that she says were what drew her to him, which is exactly how classic predation works, how predatory behavior exploits insecurities. And to see it happen on the screen, not only in the past, but also in the present, because they're still talking about these things, it's just horrifying.
It really is. It really is. And I mean, God, I think of that he has that smile, probably like it's the first person he's ever been with outside of Gracie, because he literally says so. He says so. And when he's going to the bathroom to get the towel, the first thing Elizabeth does is she goes and gets that letter. Like, that is the only mission that matters to her. It's like she's, like, in a Mission Impossible movie trying to, like, steal something, and the minute he leaves, she's opening that letter. She's reading it because she's become obsessed with really tabloid culture. She's become obsessed with her subject. She has that amazing monologue where she's reading the letter, which is one of the best scenes of the year. But then, I mean, you just oppose that to then, Joe finally crumbling. And it's really, there's like 3 bedroom scenes. There's the scene where, he's still smoky, and from the barbecue and everything. And it foreshadows a lot of their relationship and really shows that, like, he's still a kid. He's still like, I'm going to get into my bed and not, and smell like a barbecue pit or smell like outside. And instead of showering, I'm just going to go put water on myself. And she's kind of crying about that situation. And you can tell that Gracie's had, like, she still has maybe some regrets there about that. But then, I mean, there's the cake scene, which I think says a lot about how delicate he has to be around Gracie. How when he has to eat that damn cake. That's really a sad scene. It's funny at first when you first see it, but then the fact that he's probably had to do this so many times, and he walks in after, like, talking to Elizabeth and having, like, a nice moment with her, just on this walk, getting to know him, getting to know the area. And he goes in there and you could just hear Milton go, "Oh God," and eating that cake. He's like, "Oh, so good." Cause it's just like the next little thing to keep this lie, to keep this from her exploding. And then he has that moment where he's like, "This could be good for you." And then he switches back because he realized he misspoke. And he's like, "No, I mean for us, the movie will be good for us." And then when he misspeaks again, if we are in love as we say we are, that's when she just fucking loses it. And I just love how little words change. And that's the brilliance of Sammy Birch's screenplay. Little words from Joe can trigger Gracie, get her off the track, and then make her this kind of crazy, unstoppable force that just is she's going to get back on it. She may go hunting at the end, looking for those quails or looking at that fox and kind of realizing that's exactly who she is. She's a predator. But then at the end, she's going to sit in the bleachers with the kids and act like everything's okay. Right. And Joe's the one that's far away from everyone. He's still detached, which I think is an excellent touch by the end from Haynes and Company.
Yeah, it really is. And that scene you mentioned about Joe when he smells like the charcoal or gas grill. Yeah. When she says, "You're stinking up the sheets," that was so horrifying to me when I was watching it, because I just thought, like, this is also something, it reminded me of something that a mom in a movie would say to a teenage boy, not something that a wife would say to her husband. And I think that Sammy Birch also knows that too. And like you said, is playing with lines. Another moment in the screenplay I want to talk about that my reaction to is similar to how I feel when I watch horror movies. And that is when her daughter is trying on graduation dresses. When she says, "I want to commend you for being so brave and showing your arms like that."
Horrifying.
And you just see the life drain from her daughter's face, because initially she loves that dress. She's like, "You know what? I'm going to try on another one." Like, she doesn't push back at her mom. She doesn't try to fight with her or anything. And we also see the look on Elizabeth's face when she realizes, oh, this is how Gracie talks to her children. Like, this is how she speaks to her. And it's just that, again, kind of like Southern, or I would Midwestern moms do this too. It's really like an almond mom thing of like, I'm going to say what you could interpret as a compliment, but it's actually the meanest thing you're going to hear, and you're going to internalize it for years to come. It's it's so rough.
I mean, it goes back to, I think her 3 children also too are, it's really interesting to watch how they are, because they are very aware of this relationship, their parents, the same daughter that has the instance with the dress, she has that moment at her school where Elizabeth comes to her like theater class and is completely embarrassed by the idea of, what is it, like Elizabeth saying that like the most crazy, like sort of like the most messed up people are the most interesting people to play or something like that. Then you have like the pot smoking scene where that's essentially who's really the parent there, right? Is it the child that's about to graduate high school, or is it the guy that's a 36-year-old, 13-year-old or whatever? And then their firstborn comes back and is completely combative with not just Elizabeth, but with Gracie. And the dress scene is just opposed to the scale scene at dinner, and talking about how like my mother gave me that. And it's supposed to be like, it starts off as like, oh, I was just filling out your apartment. And and then it goes to, well, my mother did it for me, and you be lucky not, you need to have a scale in your life. You know what I mean? And it's like, the hell? Like it's completely demented. But again, you could see the little bits of unraveling. And then of course, though, you see that even as that moment's about to happen, her other family walks in, and she's totally calculated this whole thing for Elizabeth to see in front. She's completely, at times you think, oh, she's about to lose it, and then she's playing puppet master. And then there's the scene in the bathroom where she, like Cody, you mentioned, when she does the lisp and when she doesn't do the lisp, because it's selected by Julianne Moore, and that's what's brilliant about the performance too, is when she's acting and when she's being herself, because she doesn't really have a lisp at the end in that final conversation that she has with Portman when she's in complete control. And I think that's what's so brilliant about that performance.
Right. She called herself fully secure in that moment.
Yeah.
And even though she admits to her naivete, there's so many contradictions in her character, even in things that she herself says, that you kind of feel like you can't even tell if she is aware of everything and is creating mystery around herself, or if she just is losing the thread from moment to moment. And if you want, if you needed a character to just constantly be bursting into really uncomfortable tears, you don't hire anybody but Julianne Moore. She's just the best at that kind of outsized emotional reaction. We saw it, like you said, in Magnolia. It's one of my favorite performances of hers. It's just absolutely unhinged. I feel like she's not getting as much discussion amongst people as opposed to Charles Melton, who's more of a discovery, and Natalie Portman, who's leading a movie and getting to do it in a really exciting way. But her performance is so essential, obviously, to the movie working, to this idea of facade and performance and cultivation and curated life, really. And I'm fascinated by how many times Julianne Moore has played a character, not with the specifics of this, but with the kind of overarching, like, we are in the suburbs, or we're in a very typical relationship, sometimes in the past, and something is wrong. Because it's not just the Todd Haynes oeuvre, it's also, The Hours is like that. Even Still Alice, kind of, it's this elevated life. They're definitely a well-off family, but it's disrupted by a force, in this one, outside of their control, Alzheimer's. And I feel like this is just something that she's really good at bringing to a character, is the sense of normalcy, but also something just deeply wrong.
Yeah. And this is also like the most on-screen time she's had with Haynes since Far From Heaven, which is kind of wild when you really think about it. Like, she's got small bits and roles in I'm Not There and Wonderstruck, but this is really, they seeked her out her and Portman and Haynes. Chris Portman was the producer on this film and got Todd involved. And yeah, it's fascinating. You're right, Cody. I don't think she's getting enough credit for what is one of the best performances. I mean, all three of them. This is an insane trio. And I mean, if we know anything about Todd Haynes, he's able to get the best from his not just his actors in general, but his actresses. And with these layered characters, it's kind of hard not to, right?
Yeah. Well, and Julianne Moore, like I usually don't really pay attention to screen time, like the numerical screen time or the percentage in a movie.
So misleading.
But I happened to see it for this one, and I was shocked by how low Julianne Moore's screen time was. And that to me is just, it actually speaks to her impact on screen. Because if you asked me, without looking at that, I would have said, oh, she's, in nearly every scene in the movie. Because when I think of this movie, I think of that feeling that she gives you when she's on screen. Like you feel so uneasy. She's such an unsettling, unique presence, but she's really not in as much as Melton or Portman. And I also, when I think of Julianne Moore in this movie, one of my favorite scenes with her is the just incredible mirror makeup scene. When this was happening, this is when I think this is when it actually clicked in that this was my favorite movie of the year, because I thought I could watch this for 10 more minutes, just them putting makeup on, staring at each other in the mirror.
With that score playing in the background. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to know, like, why Gracie applies blush like that. It is so strange, and there's so much of it. It's also great too because the brand that she uses, I'm going down a little rabbit hole here. It's Ilia, which is just such a, Cody, you mentioned 2015 and like the time capsule, right, of this movie, of thinking back to that time. Like that is an Instagram makeup brand, essentially. I mean, you can buy it at a store, but it's one of those kind of brands that you would see advertised on social media and you could buy direct. And I think that this movie has such interesting production design detail for the characters, and just these little things that when you pay really close attention and observe, you think, oh my God, this is the perfect detail for the character, whether it's Gracie having that blush or her Lily Pulitzer swell water bottle on the dresser. I gasped when I saw that. I was like, of course this woman has Lily in her wardrobe or like in her bedroom. And with Elizabeth, the emails that she has on her computer, Soho House and the ACLU, just brilliant. Like, of course, those would be the emails in that character's inbox.
It's impeccable details. I mean, it goes back to the script, but it goes just to Todd Haynes, who is one of the greats that we have working today. Okay, guys. Any honorable mentions? Other favorite films of the year you guys want to highlight real quick? Sophia, you want to go first on this?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's been such a great movie year this year. I think when I think back on 2023, I will think of it as the year of Barbie and Oppenheimer. Both of those movies I loved. I reviewed Barbie for the site. I saw Oppenheimer multiple times in various formats.
Say how many times? How many times did you see it?
We are approaching the 24-hour mark with Oppenheimer. This is, not super intentional, I would say at first. Just kind of shook out to be this way, where, a friend would want to go see it, and my dad has the 4K, watch it at home. It's a whole saga.
My dad is obsessed with it, and I love it.
He loved Oppenheimer in the most, Midwestern dad way possible, I will say. So I would say Barbie and Oppenheimer, those are the, movies of the summer and what I'll think of. I loved Past Lives earlier in the year. That one still sticks out to me as one of the best. I love Killers of the Flower Moon, Scorsese's late career masterpiece, and Lily Gladstone's performance in that. De Niro, it is just, I think, such an incredible new American epic. And I also love The Zone of Interest, the Jonathan Glazer film. It's haunting and dark and terrifying, but it gets under your skin in really, really unexpected ways. So I would say those are the big ones for me, but there are just so many. I could go on and on and on. An honorable mention, I would say that's like not as popular, maybe. I loved Hamaguchi's Evil Does Not Exist. And Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I think that people see this movie maybe as a little bit slight because of its subject matter, but I thought it was really incredible and the type of movie that I wish I had when I was 11 years old. And it definitely did the book justice.
Yeah, I love that movie. I wish more people would see it. And I'll be on the Rachel McAdams train all year. Hopefully that nomination happens. It probably won't, but you know, it would be sad. Cody, your other favorite films of the year, any highlights for you?
Yeah, for me, this really is a year of masters of cinema coming back and making something that feels more kind of either like returning to their roots or a more focused example of their artistic statement. Thinking of something like Asteroid City was one of my favorites of the year. I think it's one of Wes Anderson's best in maybe a decade. David Fincher's back with The Killer, which is just a totally back to basics, like grungy 90s style actiony character piece. I really loved Michael Mann's Ferrari. I think that was just such a fun is a weird word to use that movie, but I had fun.
Vroom.
Especially every moment that Penelope Cruz is on screen. And Sofia Coppola's Priscilla, I think, is just, again, one of the best examinations of what she's going for as a filmmaker since Maria Antoinette, maybe, so almost 20 years. Yeah, it's been a good year for movies, like Sophia said. And then, yeah, of course, Oppenheimer. You can't not have a conversation about 2023 that doesn't start and end with that. Both movies masterpieces to my mind, and just one of the more exciting moments of film going we've had in probably half a decade at least.
Yeah, no, those are all great choices, guys. It's been an absolute great year. I can't wait to continue talking with you guys into 2024. Cody, can you tell everybody where they can find you on the internet?
Yep, I'm everywhere at CodyMonster91.
And Sophia?
You can find me on Twitter at Sophia_Sim and on Letterboxd at the same handle without the underscore.
We're here with our last contributor.
Wow.
Yeah. Jay, you're last this year.
This is huge.
This is big.
Gotta end with a bang here.
Gotta end with a bang. But Heyo. All right. Because we're not only just talking about Jay's favorite film of the year, we're talking about my favorite film of the year. Jay, what's our favorite film of the year?
Oh, it's a little film about an important man from an important director that made almost $1 billion. Oppenheimer, baby. It's the year of Oppie.
It's the year of Oppie, indeed. Jay, why is this your favorite movie of the year?
Oh, gosh. You know, the experience of watching this movie was definitely unlike any other viewing experience.
How many times did you see it?
I only saw it the one in theaters, and I watched it at home. And I'm probably going to go watch it with the IMAX re-release that's supposed to be coming up soon. And I just remember, this was a preview screening, but it was a mix of both press and normies.
Yeah, normies. Correct.
The normies. Yeah. And it was just, everyone was so captivated the entire time. And it just, when you're watching it, it feels like the biggest movie ever made, even though it's mostly people talking in rooms. And the pacing of this thing is unbelievable. Everybody's complaining about run times all the time. This movie whizzes by. The editing, out of this world. Maybe the achievement of the year in movies for me is the editing of Oppenheimer. And there is definitely the score as well contributes to that wonderful pacing. and just a charcuterie board of movie stars. I mean, just like so many faces you recognize, so many incredible actors coming in for bit parts. You've got Gary Oldman coming in there just out of nowhere off the top rope. Casey Affleck being this absolute scum of the earth villain for 5 minutes. It really was just from the perspective of, whoa, this is as Harry Styles would call it, a movie.
There you go.
And it just that capturing the cinematic experience, I think it was second to none this year. And then also the real thoughtfulness going on here. I think this is Nolan at his most thoughtful, at his most insightful, kind of challenging himself by doing things that he's never done before. He's been the most sexless director alive for years, and he finally started kind of challenging himself in that regard, much to the chagrin of many Gen Zers online. But it's just what a time at the movies. For 3 hours, I was just like floating, just in a different dimension, completely wrapped up by this movie, and it's my fave of the year.
Jay, it's been my favorite since I've seen it, and nothing's compared to it. I mean, there's been a lot of great movies, and we'll talk about those. And
great movie year. Yeah, really great year.
Really great. I think looking to next year already, next year looks rough in comparison. But we just have to
we didn't know how good we had it.
Exactly. We have to be grateful for what we have. And I agree with you. I mean, you're not the biggest you hadn't been the biggest Christopher Nolan fan, and you've been
I'm a convert, man.
You've been converted.
I've been Nolan pilled big time.
Because Tenet was your favorite film of 2020, correct?
It was, yeah. And I love Dunkirk.
Yeah.
But this was kind of this is the one they're going to remember him for.
You think so? Not The Dark Knight. They'll remember him for this.
You know, it's going to be so interesting to see how culture considers superhero movies in 20 years.
I think that one stands the test of time because it's considered by many to be the greatest.
I also just think this movie's so much better than that movie that I hope it's the one that they remember him for. But you're right. As far as a cultural, touchstone,
yeah,
The Dark Knight is definitely that, and really kind of represents a shift in pop culture, really.
Shift in the kind of films he's also making too, because he's never gone back from those Batman movies in terms of making something small scale. And I wouldn't say that this is, it's a $100 million movie, but this feels as small scale as we're going to get from him in a while, because like you're talking about, most of these scenes are just two people standing in a room talking about the fate of the world.
That make you vibrate in your seat.
Exactly. Much like how he's vibrating in his head from the,
yes,
from the bomb that goes off. And that's the thing, is he's known to be this man of spectacle and action sequences and everything. We're all leading up to this incredible Trinity test. Yeah. And it's one scene, and that's it, of quote unquote action. The rest of it is conversations and moral ambiguity. And restlessness on the half of J. Robert Oppenheimer. You mentioned a charcuterie board, and Cillian Murphy, who's a fan of cheese, gives a titanic performance here. The camera at times is
literally... It would be such a crime if they don't give him the Oscar for this. Because this is the only chance he's ever going to have to win an Oscar. I'm fairly confident in that.
Unless Nolan writes something else for him, because it seems like,
Bradley,
don't do it.
The nose did not play in this instance.
Man.
It played in Ocean's 13. Then here, the nose does not play.
Well, you know who else is in Ocean's 13?
Matthew
Damon.
The nose plays for him.
He does, and he's really good in this movie too, Jay. You go down the board of great performances that are in this thing.
If you're a fan of Drake and Josh,
there you go.
Come on now, this movie's for you.
The one, well, Josh is good. Drake's not in this.
Well, Josh was always the standout.
Yes, exactly. But it feels like one of those movies. I wrote in the review when it came out, it feels like one of those all-time epics, and we're getting the pleasure of seeing it. These, Lawrence of Arabia, the JFKs, the Malcolm X's, the Insiders, the things that are these process movies, but also have questions and are looking at important figures and important moments in history and asking questions that are relevant to today. Nolan tapping in from this novel, American Prometheus, and from the ideas of these books or these diaries that were given to him by Robert Pattinson on Tenet, when he started talking about the ideas of nuclear explosion. And then, the last three films that he's made, Interstellar, Dunkirk, and Tenet, have kind of led all up to this film. And yeah, you're talking about the pace, Jay. This movie moves so quickly for a 3-hour movie. I've seen it 6 times this year, and I'll be seeing it a 7th sometime in the next 2 weeks on the big screen. And I never get enough of it. And I think that there are, some people have, some people have some qualms about it. You mentioned the sex scenes, the female characters, not showing the bombing through the perspective of the Japanese.
I can understand the first 2 criticisms.
Yeah, but
honestly, not the first one. I can the female characters. I can I
get it, but I also understand the script device and that it's through Oppenheimer's limited and selfish perspective. So I get that.
Well, yeah, I think every one of those is. And
I'm also not looking for strong female characters from Christopher Nolan because there's just certain directors that can't do it.
It's not his thing. It's not that he shouldn't be better at it. He should.
He should. I say this all the time about Spike Lee. I love Spike Lee, but man, Spike.
Yeah, he's bad too.
He's bad too. You know what I mean? Doesn't make him not great, and it doesn't make his movies not great.
That's why he criticized Nolan, because he was like, I see too much of this movie.
I see myself
in my movies. Yeah. I got to find something it's not bad to say about it.
Listen, I love Spike. I love Spike,
we should have shown from the Japanese point of view is completely antithetical to what that movie is going for. I think that would be it would totally take you out of the world that movie establishes, which is the immersion of that movie is maybe its greatest strength. And that would just immediately rip you out of that, in my opinion. And I think they capture some of that. It's all internalized, right? Because, Oppenheimer never actually saw what his creation wrought, but he envisions the violence and destruction in his own mind in the world that he inhabits, which is a really powerful moment, certainly when they're in the gymnasium. And then really it comes to a head at the end where he's like, did we just guarantee humanity's destruction? Maybe.
Yeah. And that's kind of the interesting thing about the movie that it was companioned with throughout the summer in Barbie is both of these movies are these big popcorn films, but yet they're having these moments in their films that are where the main character is looking internalized at their lives and the overall placement of where they are at. And, I know that, I like Barbie a lot. I don't like it nearly as much as Oppenheimer, obviously, because it's my favorite film of the year. But it is interesting that our two of the biggest filmmakers in this year, they had $100 million films, and they're looking at their world through their characters very introspectively. And especially through Oppie here, you're talking about it. Yeah. That gymnasium scene, it even in the interrogation scene with Jason Clarke, it happens again, right? Where, that's how we've gotten that Jason Clarke photo meme, GIF thing to death online. But the whole question is about by the third act, which there's been criticisms of the third act is unnecessary and all this stuff. It's the third act's the best part of the damn film, because over time, for me, because it's what happens after the bomb? I kind of like to know how this man in the world reacted to it, and we don't react to it in a way that's right. This is how we create, the military industrial complex, and and how we have continued to do bombings even in our lifetimes, Jay. You know, I mean, that's
his
where
usefulness,
drone programs
his usefulness to the U.S. government reached an end, and so they turned on him and tried to use him as a tool
because he wasn't a team player, because he had a conscience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
that scene with Gary Oldman is one of the best scenes in the movie.
To know that that's actually what happened in real life is kind of insane.
I think every scene in that movie might be the best scene in the movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, like even at the beginning where like you're seeing the rain fall, or you're seeing like his
all that imagery kind of circling.
It's that stuff's great. I mean, there's nothing better than him doing like an ocean. You talked about Ocean's 11, or we mentioned Ocean's 13 or whatever. Like him doing with Matt Damon his own Ocean's 11 recruiting,
putting the team together,
putting the scientists together. You know what I mean, to solve all this. And I mean, this movie. I mean, I like Emily Blunt. I think that Robert Downey Jr. gives a welcome back to being a serious actor performance.
We missed so many years of Robert Downey Jr.
So many performances. Like people forget because he's been Iron Man for so long, and doing movies like Jay's favorite, The Judge.
Well, that was kind of the thing, right? It wasn't just that he stopped doing them. It was the few times that he did try, he fell flat on his face a little bit.
They were bad.
He was in that movie, The Soloist, right?
Oh, yeah, with Jamie Foxx.
Yeah,
that wasn't good. That was not a good movie. But it was the seeing all the interviews, and you kind of get consumed by the interview because they, for a long time before the strike,
it was a good interview.
They were the only interviews you had out there, and just how himself and Blunt and Damon and obviously Cillian Murphy gave themselves over to this film, but to Nolan and his vision. Like this is the directorial achievement of the year. You mentioned the editing from Jennifer Lamb. I think that's, I mean, yeah, Jay, like this movie doesn't work because of its fission and fusion idea, but the perspectives and just how pace.
Lamb has got a real hold for Nolan's obsession with distorting time, and that it comes through in the edit.
But I think Ludwig Göransson's score is propulsive, bombastic, but also haunting at times. Like the use of the strings right as they're about to drop the bomb is tension at its all-time height. Ruth de Jong's production design, who she is she very much is from the Jack Fisk school of production design. That's her mentor. Her first job was on like There Will Be Blood, and you see that kind of dripped throughout here in this film. And there's moments here too when like where Oppie and his brother and Josh Hartnett's character, they're riding through the New Mexico mountains, and it was like shot by Hoyte van Hoytema, who we haven't even talked about
Hoyte
yet.
Van Hoytema.
I mean,
he might be the guy right now.
He is the guy right now.
He's got the belt.
This and Nope last year, and yeah, he's got the championship belt. He's going to probably win an Oscar for sure this year. But it just those shots out there in New Mexico right before they create Los Alamos. It was very reminiscent of that Paul Thomas Anderson film, and that's a movie with a titanic performance about greed and corruption taking over one's soul and how one handles that. And this movie handles it in a much different way than letting it consume you. This movie examines what happens with the ramifications of building something so terrifying. And now we live in a nuclear world because of it, and the idea of a man and men, a group of men, mostly men, making a weapon that could end the whole world in order to then end a world war. It's haunting. It is. I mean, like when you think about it, Jay, there's so many moments in this movie that are now, I mean, they're historical moments, and it's haunting. It's up there with Zone of Interest, where they're just sitting in a room talking about a Holocaust or a genocide or a bomb going off, like the scene where they're picking the targets and the location, and the guy and the Secretary of War just like essentially just goes, yeah, we're not going to go here because I go on a honeymoon here, but anywhere else is fine. You're like, what the hell? Like,
yeah, I mean the dropping of the first two atomic bombs, not to get into history talk, but it's such an interesting
history
thing
time.
because they were in many ways more of a symbolic warning shot than anything. And knowing that and kind of knowing the implications of not just knowing that they existed, but using them.
Yeah.
And knowing that it was sort of a preemptive thing as much as it was to end World War II. Like the war was over. And maybe Japan would have continued to fight a little bit more because that was kind of their mentality. But for all intents and purposes, the war was over.
I mean, it was. And you saw they had there's that great shot of Oppie on his horse in the rain. And he finds the flyer about like, essentially the team having moral scruples about everything. And he's like, yeah, the Japanese march on, even though the Germans are about to surrender. And, there's that wonderful line of like, they don't know what they have essentially, and they won't know until they use it. And yet what they learn is we need to have more. And then that's where the whole, who's really the unsung hero of this movie in terms of performance? I think he's incredible in this movie, and he was incredible in Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, is Benny Safdie. I think his performance.
He's doing a big accent.
He's doing big accent, but he's really good.
Yes,
with it.
I thought you were going to say Krumholtz, who would be my pick for unsung hero.
Krumholtz is phenomenal. He's always got an orange peeled, ready to go.
Yeah.
I mean, Hartnett is great. Alden Ehrenreich. It's just nice to see him back.
Great to see him back between this and Fair Play. Nice comeback here for him.
Yeah.
And I mean, Tom Conti as Einstein is really good.
What a
you almost don't even consider that a performance because you're just like, oh, they got Albert Einstein. Very cool. Because you're just like, he's doing an Albert Einstein impression. He's doing more than that.
But I mean, but your guy Rami in here too.
My guy Rami, my number one, Rami Malek. He's doing great with a pen. He's doing some great pen work.
Man, he just slaps that pen. He's slapping. Obviously, when you watch the movie, he's just slapping things out of his hands left and right. He's like,
killing it with that clipboard.
Yeah, get that petition out of here.
I did think when I was watching it, I was like, great bit. Rami's going to do nothing. Really great move by Rami. I like him a lot more now. But he does obviously end up playing a pivotal role at the end of the film. And I think he does a really good job.
I think he's good. Yeah, I think he's really good. It's probably like the best thing he's done in years.
Well, we just talked about The Master. He was in that.
That's probably the best thing he's done since The Master.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, man, do you have what else do you want to say about it? Anything else?
I mean, just like how Oppenheimer was able to assemble like the best team of scientists in the world, Christopher Nolan just brought together the best technicians in the movie world for this film. And I guess whatever he didn't use, Martin Scorsese used. And it's such an achievement, particularly, I think, visually for the kind of movie it is. For it to be as visually compelling and captivating as it is, I think is really special. And it is Nolan making just really his first fully grown up movie, I guess. Is that fair to say? It's not a genre movie. And I say this, I don't say that to like disparage his other movies.
Was Dunkirk a grown up movie?
Okay, Dunkirk. You're right. Yeah. You're right. Dunkirk.
I was like, Jay.
Even though, although Dunkirk is like that's a trickier movie. It's almost the thing about this movie that's
it's
weird
more. This one's more straightforward.
I appreciate that it's more stripped down in that way. It does have the interconnecting, the fission
gimmick
thing.
Yeah, it's got the gimmick. Yeah,
but that's way less than we're kind of used to from him.
I mean, like probably like Memento and Dunkirk and this, right?
No, not even Memento. That Memento is like a tricky genre, showy, look at me kind of movie. So and it is made for adults, but that doesn't
like Insomnia,
like grown up.
Like Insomnia, that movie is
Insomnia. That's another little genre. That's just a little.
But that's
movie.
just like
he's not striving for anything with
nothing.
Insomnia,
he's
really.
not doing anything in that movie. You know what I mean? Like he's like I had
that
a
movie's
paycheck.
pretty good. Well, that was just him getting his foot in the door in Hollywood.
Yeah. with the studio.
But this movie, not to disparage, I will not even talk about anything else he's done. This movie is like an immaculate work of adult cinema.
Yeah.
And it is so rare to see, and I'm so excited that it made as much money as it did. Christopher Nolan is like
he's the guy.
He is a brand. He's the guy.
Yeah. He's the guy.
He is the guy. Even more than Tarantino, more than anybody.
Well, he's probably up there with Big Jim.
Yeah, but even then
But Big Jim now is more of a brand for Avatar than it is Big Jim.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's only making Avatar
movies. He's only making Avatar movies. You know what I mean? And doing terrible.
It's almost like Jim Cameron has this ability to like figure out what people want.
Yeah.
And Christopher Nolan, people want Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, people want Nolan to tell them what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like what Spielberg had in the 90s. Where it's like I 80s and 90s where like just tell me what I need to see. Oh, great one. And I will show up 700
Pretty
times
much.
dressed in a suit with a pipe and a hat because I mean, you know, Barbie and Oppenheimer, it's going to be a real test to see going forward what the lessons we learn from such a global event like that is. And the wrong lessons can be taken from Barbie in that, we're just going to make more properties from Mattel.
Polly Pocket movie?
Well, didn't they just like say recently that they're going to do a Monopoly movie? Which shout out to Erik. I hope he gets that role as the Monopoly man. That would just be great. But those are the wrong lessons because
I think I saw Daniel Day-Lewis is going to be the Monopoly man.
Oh my God. He's bringing back the There Will Be Blood mustache.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing about it is, Jay, is what made Barbie successful and Oppenheimer successful is giving the creative team, especially the director and writer of the film, both Nolan and Greta Gerwig, complete control to make what they want. Now we hear all these stories about how Greta had to fight for certain scenes or certain aspects because obviously she has Warner Brothers and Mattel to deal with, but Nolan's obviously different and doesn't have to fight for that anymore. And really, he got like a blank check from Universal, and this being his first film.
And shout out Universal, send in the 4Ks to the critics.
And the Mondos.
Come on now.
And setting us up with nice events. Like, good for them. They're killing it. They know they have Christopher Nolan and understand. And I mean, an
artificial 4K shortage because they gave thousands of them away for free.
But also they did sell out. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the other thing too, is Christopher Nolan's next job to save physical media as well, because physical media is going away and his movie made up for 45% of the physical media sales this year.
Right now, Christopher Nolan is in the if he builds it, they will come territory. He can do whatever he wants and people will be like, thank you, Chris, for telling me what I want.
What do you want him to make next, Jay? Anything? Does it matter?
Honestly, he'd be a good choice for the Monopoly movie.
What does he make next is the question. Like this feels like a bookend.
Well, it's so interesting because he was kind of doing the one for me, one for them thing for a while.
Well, that's what Tenet is, right? That's one for the
one for
genre.
It feels like a one for them, yeah. And then this was the one for me, and it makes $1 billion. So
imagine
I don't know. I'm not going to tell Christopher Nolan what he should make next, but
I mean,
I don't know. James Gunn, bring it back to Batman or whatever. I don't
know. Tenet 2?
No, he doesn't work with Warner Brothers anymore, though.
Tenet 2?
210. How could he do that?
2 net, 2 Tenet?
10 tenets. Just do tenets.
2 net.
2 net.
2 net.
2 net. 2. No, I mean, I don't know. He'll do something. It'll be cool,
and it'll be,
and he will have a blank check.
Yeah, he can make whatever goddamn movie he wants.
Yes,
and I just want to reiterate again, no one should ever question if Christopher Nolan is a box office commercial draw anymore. We did that a little bit during the box office draft earlier this year, Jay, and man, that $950 million, just think about it. It's so insane for a 3-hour movie where they're just walking and talking. And it's kind of a miracle that this thing exists. And, but it felt like watching like a new all-timer. And,
yeah, just don't make a Bond movie, Chris.
You don't think he would do?
You did that with Tenet.
You don't think he would do good though with a Bond movie though?
He would do fine, but he would still be under the Broccoli's. And look, working with the Broccoli's is like eating broccoli. You don't want to do it.
Well, I mean, if you eat broccoli, there are good ways to make broccoli. Just not. Are you talking like steamed with no seasoning?
Look, I'm very anti-broccoli in general.
Oh, really? You're very.
I don't like the texture of broccoli.
Do you not like green vegetables? Is that your whole thing?
I like some green vegetables fine, but broccoli is not one of them.
Well, as we're talking about it, I mean, then Jay, what are your favorite green vegetables?
Oh man, this is normally the main show is so much more structured and
but now
but I'm happy to bring some tangents in.
That's the last tangent. It's the first new tangent of the new year.
Yeah, I mean, I like asparagus.
You like a Brussels
sprouts? Yeah, you can prepare a Brussels sprout real nice, and that's a very trendy green right now. It
is like the trendiest of green. It's almost like so trendy, like it needs to be put on pause for a little bit.
And that used to be the expression. It's like eat your Brussels sprouts, and now it's like eat my Brussels. Give me all the Brussels sprouts you got. A little balsamic on there. I don't know. I like a green bean.
Like a green bean? All right.
Yeah.
Do you like?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. You like some peas?
No, not a fan of peas.
Not a peas. No. Okra?
Yeah, okra's. I'm in the middle on okra. But being a Southern boy, you gotta like. I've had plenty of fried okra, but not my number one.
Not your cup of tea.
In the words of Spike Lee, not my cup of tea.
Jay,
yes,
we talked a lot about Oppie. What are some of your other favorite movies of the year?
So I have a theory that we are going to look back on 2023.
Oh, here we go.
And in mass, it will be a consensus that we had two true agreed upon all-timers. And it will be Oppenheimer and it'll be Killers of the Flower Moon. In the same way that in 2007, it's like There Will Be Blood, No Country, Zodiac, and then I guess some people say Michael Clayton.
Yeah, I do.
I think in the same way it'll be
I do.
Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon. I really like Michael Clayton, but I don't think it's on par with those other movies.
Shut your fucking mouth. It does. It is. It's a masterpiece.
I think it's going to be Oppenheimer and it's going to be Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
Just huge statements from huge filmmakers at different points in their careers.
I do think that, and we talked about this earlier when I was on with Dan and Tyler, but I think Past Lives is going to be up there for a lot of people as well too. I think that's
no, I disagree. No, I like Past Lives a lot, but it will not be.
Oh no, I think people are going to talk about it for a very, very long time.
I don't think enough people saw it.
I don't think enough people fucking saw Killers of the Flower Moon. It's a problem.
Killers of the Flower Moon made $150 million.
Oh, good. That's like a third of the budget.
I don't care. Regardless of budget, Past Lives made like $15 million.
Yeah, but people love it.
The people that saw it love it. Yes,
exactly.
But it's not. It made 10% of what Killers of the Flower Moon made.
Exactly.
So let's not pretend that they're sort of on the same.
How about Barbie? People are going to talk about Barbie forever. That made
but Barbie is a Barbie movie, and I like Barbie, but Barbie is a Barbie
ruffling
movie.
People's feathers.
I'm sure I am. I like Barbie.
There's a lot of feathers around here.
It's not. It doesn't have the same weight that
I know. I agree.
Some of these other movies.
I agree. I mean, movie like Zone of Interest is a movie that I love, and I think that critically will stick. I mean, commercially, obviously not, but it's one that's very important. I mean, you look at something like Anatomy of a Fall, right? Like that movie. Will that carry because everybody loves it now because they don't see a lot of courtroom films?
I'm kind of whatever on Anatomy of a Fall. I like it fine.
I think it's good. I think it's a solid movie, but I don't think it's like
solid is how I would phrase it.
Solid as a rock. But
if you want to talk about like the movies, the J movies of 2023.
So the dad movies of 2023.
I mean, we're kind of getting to that point.
I mean, it's
but,
getting to that point because I know what you're going to talk about.
The Iron Claw is my like movie that I'm on the soapbox for, like screaming from the top of a mountain. I feel like how great I think that movie is.
I feel like that and Ferrari for you.
Well, Ferrari rules,
yeah,
for sure. And the other one that really kind of, and a lot of people have been seeing it and praising it, but the one that I'm like, this might be the best genre blockbuster of the decade is Godzilla -1. I thought really? Godzilla -1 is a premier piece of entertainment cinema.
Well, that
also has a lot to say, and also is so, from a technical perspective, just so impressive and
good companion piece to the movie to Oppenheimer in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there you go, Spike. If you want to see the Japanese perspective, go see Godzilla -1, my friend.
I mean, really, honestly, it is about this.
I mean, that is what Godzilla is about. Yeah,
is always been about, but definitely in this, it almost feels like a creative film in terms of like the human storyline, and we spend a lot of and you actually give a shit about the storyline with the humans as opposed to like the American
you
films,
really do. Yeah,
where you're like jumping down rabbit holes.
Yeah, they really do make the American ones just look like absolute trash.
I mean, they are absolute trash, but like the Godzilla -1 is it was a big surprise, probably the biggest surprise. It might be the biggest surprise this year. I had no idea that movie was actually going to be as good as it was. And
it is truly. I heard all the hype and was like, okay, let's see how good this actually is, and it far exceeded my expectations. That was one of my favorites. But I mean, God, you look at this year and you talk about 2024 and how bleak it kind of looks. Just look at who made movies this year: Nolan, Scorsese, Todd Haynes, David Fincher, Alexander Payne, Michael Mann, Hayao Miyazaki, Paul Schrader, Wes Anderson, Sofia Coppola, Greta Gerwig. Who else we got? Kelly Reichardt, Yorgos Lanthimos. Like, I'm not the biggest Yorgos guy, but I mean, come on, it's Yorgos Lanthimos. Yeah. William Friedkin in his last year of life, unfortunately. It was an amazing year with these amazing Wim Wenders, these amazing filmmakers making films. We were eating good this year.
Yeah, you didn't even mention like Wes Anderson, Andrew Haigh. People love Emerald Fennell. The Coops brought out his second film, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck came back. We got a Spider-Verse film. We got a new Mission Impossible film. We had, we had Koreeda come back.
Finally answered the question: why does Willy Wonka love chocolate so much?
We had John Wick 4. We had Ari Aster.
Yeah, I mean that's a. Yeah, I had to scroll down my list a little bit to get to those folks.
Yeah, but no, I get you. But we had. I mean, the Guardians ended. There was a ton of stuff.
It did. It kind of felt like a great year for auteur cinema.
Yeah,
and a little bit of the beginning of the end of the superhero age.
Oh man!
So overall, win-win.
Rough for Marvel, rough for DC. Yeah, Jay and I were sitting here. Yeah, but then our favorite movie of the year literally has a moment where like Oppenheimer puts on his like suit after wearing the. It's one of my funniest moments of the year, where Oppenheimer takes off his military outfit and he puts on his suit and he grabs the pipe and the hat. It's almost like literally taken out of Batman. Like it, and so
yeah. I will say though, from the
that's the most superhero movie of the year. In that
Spider-Verse is kind of an achievement in my opinion. I think that movie's really good. Yeah,
Spider-Verse totally rules. I love that movie so much. I wanted the strike to end so bad so they can get back and start making the next one. Which I mean, for Jay knows this. For me to say like get back in there and make another superhero movie, that says a lot. But I think that that's the Lord and Miller factor of it all, right? Jay, is that they're filmmakers and writers and creators to be reckoned with, and they put a lot of care and attention to detail into their movies. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned it, like Zone of Interest is one. I talked with Sophia and Cody earlier about May December, a movie that I absolutely love.
Yeah, I love that one too.
Boy and the Heron just absolutely broke me. Like two small movies that I don't think people are really giving enough attention to are All Dirt Roads, Taste of Salt, The Taste of Things. 2 movies that I think are beautiful. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to just put your earbuds on and listen to the Smiths and watch David Fincher make a great revenge hitman movie? Are You There? Got It to Me, Margaret.
That was a great surprise. I think Kelly Freeman Craig is super talented.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Asteroid City. I know others didn't, but
I like Asteroid City a lot. Master Gardener is one that all
the big Schrader head. That's what
I love. Me some Schrader, Schrader.
I can't wait for his next movie.
Self-Loathing Men.
Oh, Canada with Richard Gere.
Oh yeah, Richie Gere.
Passages. Ferrari Air. Bottoms was a movie that I loved a lot.
Are we just reading movies now? You Hurt My Feelings is one that I like more than most, I think.
We're just this is it. So
Rye Lane was a really nice surprise. That one was very visually
La
interesting.
Chimera was very good. Royal Hotel. You mentioned K Mutiny from William Friedkin. The Burial, Jay.
Good flick. Jamie Foxx absolutely just hitting grand slams.
Oh my God. That well, last one I'm going to give a shout out to, and it's to my guy here, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
He got a quote in an FYC campaign for a movie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem.
Yeah, good movie.
And that movie's really good. That was a lot of fun.
Pretty good year for animation.
Pretty good year for animation. Usually it's not the case. Documentaries, I'm still trying to catch up on a lot.
Pixar, you're done. You're out of here.
What did they have this year? They didn't have
Elemental.
Anything. Oh, that's right. That movie made a ton of money though. That movie had legs. But
you know what else had legs? The fire and the water and all the characters. I mean,
oh my God, that wasn't your best.
I have such like a fundamental problem with that movie, where I think the metaphor is so broken, irredeemably broken. And we won't get into that now. But I think that is such a poorly thought out concept. So. Anyway, if you wanna find that out, just hit me up on Twitter or something. I don't know. Read my Letterboxd review.
All right. Okay. Well, I don't know if people are going to want to do that. Sounds like you don't like it.
Bad movie. Yeah, but I the central metaphor of that movie is so antithetical to what that movie is saying.
I feel like that has been the case though with the last couple of movies that they've had, where
the blobby Pixar movies.
Yeah, where they just it's the Pete Docter,
where they're anthropomorphizing abstractions.
Yeah, it is the Pete Docter of the world, where
it's Pete Docter's world. We're just living in it.
Yeah, where he just has an interesting premise, and they're not that actually interesting.
Pixar.
Yeah, exactly. God,
Toy Story 5 coming soon.
Jay, tell everybody where they can find you on the internet.
Oh, you can find me on Letterboxd. Just search Jay Ledbetter. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Jay Ledbetter. And you can find me at a local Atlanta cinema. You know, just hanging out.
Are you just hanging out outside, hoping somebody goes and, hangs out with you? Share.
I'm just hanging out. I'll tell you what. I went to Ferrari yesterday. Second time seeing Ferrari.
Yeah.
It was middle of the afternoon. It was just me and a bunch of 65-year-olds. I was amongst my people. Let me tell you, I was thriving.
You were thriving.
Thriving.
Love the movies. Is that your like, did you go and get like soft serve with them afterwards?
Yeah, we all went to the orthopedist together.
I was gonna say, you all wearing your New Balance shoes?
Yeah, and then we went to a museum.
Oh, which one?
The Museum of Not Natural History. It's about magic.
You're really ending this end of the year show on a great note, Jay. Well, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. You can listen to this show every Monday. And you can also listen to the show that me and Jay do every Thursday, Director Watch. We're wrapping up our PTA series in the new year. And at the beginning of the new year, our new series will start as well. We're going to do the Licorice Pizza episode. But then after that, we're going to be doing the films of William Friedkin.
Big Willie style.
Well,
it's
I don't know.
Be a Big Willie winter.
Exactly.
And spring.
There you go. Yeah, and you can find all those shows where you get your podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. 5-star reviews, please. We'd really love those to ring in the new year. Go to awardswatch.com and sign up for the newsletter. That's where you can get all of our shows and interviews and reviews and everything from all the team. Just want to say Happy New Year to everyone that's been listening and reading on the site. And thanks again to all of our contributors that were on the show with us today. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.